Those of you I find lacking will quit. And those of you who refuse to quit will have a podcast. This base suffers 3 podcasts a year, unfortunate podcasts that I will not hesitate to repeat if you cross me. Here's the thing that's very frustrating about this movie.
Already?
I'd say minute 10.
Okay.
The reveal of Sam Jack.
Yes.
And you go...
I mean, he's there right at the start, but yes.
I guess his first real dialogue scene, maybe.
After the helicopter at the start. Sure. Yeah.
Disregard my time code crack.
Okay.
Early on in the film.
Okay.
When we're really served Sam Jack for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 things become abundantly clear. You're like, okay, this guy only lives in flashbacks.
Right.
He's probably not going to really interact with our main character. Maybe kind of the selling point of the poster.
Sure, this thing had the Mexican vibes, yes.
But it is interesting. It's interesting to have a character all exist in the past in a place, in a Rashomon-style retelling, what have you, right? But then you're like, oh, fuck. Samuel L. Jackson is playing a drill sergeant.
True.
In basic training. How has this never happened before? You hear him reciting this dialogue and you're like, oh my God, fucking Sam Jack, one of the greatest dresser downs, one of the greatest on-screen
down
yellers.
dressers. Let's invent this
Dresser
word.
downs. Down dressers.
Are either of those right?
No, neither of them count as words, but we can do whatever
We're making
want.
both.
Yep.
And then you're like, oh, he's going to do it for like 4 minutes total.
That's your big complaint?
Kind of. I think
it's-
that is the most juice this movie has.
I think this movie is a 5-star masterpiece. No, I'm kidding.
David,
I'm
where
kidding.
do you
I'm
truly
kidding.
stand?
I think it's good. I think it's a fun movie.
I think it's fun.
I think this movie is good, and I have a few notes. But
Sure.
I cannot deny you are saying what the big complaint was.
Yeah.
And we should introduce our podcast, but you got it to it right. It's the same thing as the Mexican.
Yeah.
Don't promise me these 2 together if you're not going to give me them together. Like, that's it.
Casting him was the biggest mistake of the movie, which I'll get into 2 hours from now.
Great.
Great.
That is generally how
I think
we
you're
operate
right.
on
Like
this show.
I think he's kind of the best part of the movie, and it fucks the movie up.
They rewrote the whole mystery to justify the casting in a way that breaks the movie. I say as someone who's here because he likes the movie.
Sure. This is an interesting film. And a movie that I truly spent 20 plus years knowing basically nothing
Basically?
about. Basically. I should say this. The movie is hella basic.
It's a little
No.
basic.
We have to get this out of the way. It literally is.
I had to promise myself I wasn't going to make a
I'm
joke
joking.
like if it came out today, it'd be called mid.
Yeah.
Like we're not.
No, I'm going to log my
the basic
letterbox
thing.
joke
We're
right
going to
now.
retire.
Can I log my joke?
I
I've just
guess.
been waiting for this and I want to post it. I want to write it out in real time. Basic, more like complicated. That is my fucking review of this movie.
It's pretty good.
Thank you.
It's pretty funny. Is it complicated?
Well,
I'm
that's,
not
I think
that's
I'm not
another
saying
funny into.
sophisticated. I'm not saying sophisticated.
Right.
Complicated, I do think is the word.
I don't know how to hold off on
But
getting into that part
get
of it
into
because
it.
that's
Okay, well,
the
look-
biggest part of the discussion.
What if you made Rashomon, but you only talked to 2 people for the entirety of Rashomon?
No, but it's like,
sort of the pitch
what
of
if
the
the Sam Jackson character was supposed to be in Travolta's trunk at the end of the movie, and they rewrote the whole thing to avoid that and made it too complicated?
Okay, well,
That's the thing.
when we can dig into extra textual facts like that. That obviously, if that is true, is a huge problem. I did not realize that, but
You've been doing some extra textual work. You've been...
I found out so much stuff about this movie that'll blow your mind. I actually found out that Sam Jackson and Travolta were in a movie before this together.
Was it some indie thing, like an art movie or something? Like, I don't know
some
about that.
art house garbage.
Yeah,
some
right.
pretentious
Some fucking
art
can-
house.
Film
It was where
festival.
you find out who's talking, and the person who's talking is a baby. You look at them.
Yes.
You're like, look who is doing it.
I'm just
People
like,
forget that Sam Jack was the physical baby that Bruce was voicing. That all 3 Pulp Fiction guys were in the same movie.
in Rashomon, they talk to various people about the
Yes.
event. It's like if you did Rashomon where you go to one guy and he's like, well, this is what happened. The other guy's like, no, this is what happened. You go to the other guy and he's like, he's wrong, but I was lying. Anyway, here's what happened. Like, it's
No, but they
this-
all agreed that they were going to lie about it, but one guy was lying for a different reason, all to try to provoke another thing to happen. Like, if you actually think about what would happen if this wasn't a movie, you'd just seen this series of events.
Sure.
It's like Travolta sat down with all these people and said, all right, you're going to say this thing happened, you're going to say this thing happened, you're going to say this thing happened, and we're going to make this guy say this thing happen because he thinks he's incriminated. And hopefully Harry Connick Jr. at some point will point out that this guy wasn't this guy, so then I can confront him about what actually happened, even though that's not what actually happened, all to make this guy do this thing. But really, we're in Section 8.
There is no internal logic to this movie because it is all to serve, in theory, the reaction from the audience, delivering the information to them in the order that will be most shocking or exciting. Right? I mean...
I don't want to be so negative so quick, but it's hard to not get into the fact that, like, I'm of two minds about this movie, which is I really like it, and it also objectively makes no sense at any point.
And by the way, I don't mean what I just said fully as a slam, because I think when a movie can successfully stick the landing of being entertaining in that way, I will forgive it not making sense.
I think that if Travolta in this movie was the audience surrogate and he found out everything when we did or just a little bit before us and solved the case,
yes,
it'd be great. I mean, the best thing this movie has going for it is there's one thing I want out of a movie, and it's Tom Hardy asking tough questions.
Well, literally.
Yes.
That's what you actually want.
Yeah,
right?
I'm like, so I need Venom and this are my favorite movies. It's like when Tom Hardy is out there asking the tough questions, I know that the movie's going to be super entertaining and grounded.
Are you aware? And let me set up a lot of things here. This is Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David. Or am I?
What?
I am. Or am I?
Wait a second, but David Sims is white.
At what point was he thinking that no one was ever going to check his ID the rest of his life and he could just keep pretending to be that guy?
It's a fun twist.
I'll say that. The delivery of that twist,
it's good.
the moment, the slow motion reaction shot.
It's like, this is just one of those movies where you don't care that it doesn't make sense because you're not invested enough to be like, no, I need to puzzle this out. You're just kind of like, all right, so he's black. Whatever you want to do next, just go ahead. That's fine.
I want to restate. It not making sense is not a fundamental slam for me.
Well,
I think I'm stating a reality.
Well, I think the reality of this movie is this is a very, very fun movie to me that is unbelievably well made, that is not designed to be watched a billion times. Like, I watched it more times than George Folsey Jr. to prepare for this podcast. And in some ways that was great because I'm prepared, but in others it's like the movie it's not asking for scrutiny, and when I'm giving it, it's like, hey, stop watching me, please.
Yes.
Like, you're noticing too much. Please don't watch me.
You not
It's
don't
Giovanni
take me
Ribisi.
seriously.
Like, stop giving me the third degree or I'll throw up on you.
I think it's a little more like, stop giving me the third degree or
He's like, okay, the character's gay. Okay, Ted Levine. That's what I'm gonna do.
That's my whole fucking take. He was like, how do gay people talk? Buffalo Bill.
I swear, had he never played a gay character before?
It feels
he's
kind
done
of
so many
astonishing,
movies.
right?
But I want to be very clear. I think actors should take big swings. Like, when it comes to acting, I'm like Ponyo. I like Ham. I like big swings. I love Travolta in this movie. But
I can't go with you there, but we'll get into
the
it.
Giovanni Ribisi thing in this, God bless him. I like him a lot. But I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know why no one was like, this. What are we playing here? Are you trying to be a serial killer, or is this what you think gay people are? I don't know what's happening.
7 other Ribisi performances I feel that way about, and people had prepped me for this one, and I'm like, I kind of enjoy it.
You enjoyed this one?
I kind of do.
I think he is
versus like
miserably
The
bad
Gift, where I'm like, I want to run headfirst into a wall.
Well, the problem with The Gift, where he kind of has a similar function of like,
yes,
where I'm like, you actually have to pay attention because he's important. I know
right.
He seems annoying.
And the amount of shit he's doing makes it hard to digest the information his character is delivering.
But The Gift that performance is maybe even more offensive in a way. And in here, you're kind of like, okay, well, if I just set the one thing aside, he's really it's just, whatever.
The basic style, we're once again overloading information in order that's confusing to people. This is a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to pick whatever crazy patch and projects they want. Ben is giving me a thumbs up for knowing how to do my own show. We know how to do this. We're professionals. This is a mini-series on the films of John McTiernan. It's called Pod Hard with a Venge Cast.
I'm saluting because we're saying goodbye to Johnny.
Right.
It's been so fun with him.
What are you talking about? But this film was 21 years ago and the man's still alive. Surely he kept working. Oh, no, he went to prison.
This is a real trip for me
He
because
went to prison and went bankrupt and never worked again.
I've only heard 3 episodes now because of when we're recording this.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm in some kind of non-linear time travel situation where everyone's like, we're at the end of the podcast. I'm like, I haven't heard Hunt for Red October yet, guys.
It's a bit of a basic. You're going to have to consult us, and we'll tell you our interpretation of how the other episodes went.
Well, I'm going to have a lot of questions later when I do my rankings saying, did you guys talk about this thing? Did you talk about this thing?
Our guest today is BenDavid Grabinski, who is creator, co-creator, co-showrunner, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, director, writer, happily, many other credits, a dear friend of mine. But what I was trying to set up here, do you know that based on, David, Ben,
Yes.
our Spider-Man 3 episode bit, where the two of us and Jamel kept doing impressions of Tom Hardy.
Yeah, being like, why are you corrupt, man? What's your problem?
Let me maybe stop doing wars.
Don't be a jerk. Hey, I got my notebook here. Question 1, why are you a jerk?
BenDavid's basically spent a year like spiraling out a universe of His Girl Friday style.
All right. So I was obsessed with the journalism in Venom, and I was a journalism
He's a great
major in
journalist.
college.
He's a
You
great
were
journalist.
obsessed
And
with
I'd
his
been-
hard-hitting takes.
Well, I'd been
and
making,
scoops.
Yes.
jokes about his journalism for a bit, and none of them were as good. And then when I listened to that episode, I was like scream laughing, and I had texted Griffin saying, what I really want a Venom movie to be is like His Girl Friday, where he's a newspaper man, and then
And the banter's between Eddie and Venom.
yeah, and
That's the oil and vinegar.
And I kept
right.
joking about this and kind of half pitching
Oil
it
and
to
water.
people to a point where I ended up somehow commissioning a Venom artist to do like the main key art from His Girl Friday, where they're like on the phone, and this won't because this is radio. This is a TV show. Everyone can see what
post
I'm
it.
doing.
We'll
now,
post
right?
the image. We'll post the image.
But I'm gonna have to show you guys in order to.
I have seen this.
I mean, it would make sense that you'd seen it. I don't know if you
Yes.
read my text or not.
Do you think
I
it would
read
be
your fucking
Eddie? Yeah, well, that's the experience, the Griffin Newman experience.
But
Hell yeah. I love this. Wait, who made this? Sorry, I love that.
it's a guy who does like Venom comics for
right,
Marvel. And it just became a thing that I thought was the funniest thing in the world. Is like those movies need to be about journalism. They need to quadruple down to like the newspaper man movies
Have you pitched like,
back then.
can I do a Marvel Comics what if one shot? What if Venom worked in a 30s newspaper?
No, because I'm a fucking idiot, and I only keep thinking it has to be a thing that costs $100 million.
Well, no, it should. You're right.
No, but that's way easier. And something you could do also black and white. It's like less of a complicated issue with it.
Yeah.
But that was weirdly when I was watching this first time, I'd forgot his name was Tom Hardy, and it just became very funny to me.
It is so strange. Like it is. You think about how rarely there is a movie that names a character a name that later will be claimed by a major movie star.
Tom Hardy.
But it's because it was inspired by the Hardy Boys, which
That makes perfect
Vanderbilt
sense.
grew up on, and he always wanted to write a Hardy Boys movie, and then this was his version of it. So he's like, well, I got to call him that.
This was his version of it?
Well, he's like the Hardy Boys
So many
mystery.
questions about
is
this
like,
movie.
He was doing like a 90s twisty thriller, but
That
from
I
his
can-
Hardy Boys
Okay.
child brain.
Because, I don't think the Hardy Boys would be part of like a secret anti-drug extra
No, but that
military
is like a good
organization.
take.
Maybe they
like
would.
that's an angle.
I'm pretty sure that those 90s Hardy Boys, like blue spine paperback, which I actually own some.
Yeah.
I think they had like several that were like mystery during a hurricane, and the cover is like people standing there and things blowing away.
Can you just imagine if you were watching like a 50s noir movie and the guys kept on being like, we're looking for George Clooney, see? Bring us Clooney. That's your head on the
I
plate.
just like the idea of Eddie investigating someone and being like, they seem okay. And then Venom being like, no,
Yes.
dig deeper.
Yes.
Like the interplay.
No, Venom's like, no, it's Section 8.
We don't really know what the take is on Venom 3 yet, do we? Is there any chance it's Spotlight? Like maybe it we don't know.
It's
It
actually
could
Dark
be.
Waters. That's
It's
where
Dark
they're going
Waters.
with it.
So it's the one it's being directed by
Kelly
Marcel.
who wrote the first two, correct?
Which is kind of thrilling.
And she came up with the story with Hardy.
Co-credited.
And Juno Temple is like the co-lead.
Right.
And Chiwetel
People think
Ejiofor,
she's
who would
playing
never be in a superhero movie.
Shriek?
Cool. Fine.
Is that right?
Yeah, sure. I don't know.
She's playing Madame Web.
Yeah, they're
gotta
actually
bring
going to
her
have a
back.
new take on Madame Web.
Yes.
Um,
No, I'm sorry. Shriek is who fucking It was in the last movie.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. I don't remember that movie clearly.
She's playing some female fucking
maybe she's Black Cat.
symbiote. No,
She's
she's
Black
playing
Cat?
a female symbiote.
Black Cat.
She's not
How
playing
have they
Black
never
Cat.
done Black Cat? They've done so many Spider-Man movies now.
You don't remember when Academy Award nominee Felicity Jones walked into...
Is it Amazing Spider-Man 2?
Yes. And went, "Hi, I'm Felicia, your new secretary."
Right, and does nothing else, and it's never resolved.
You don't have anything else to say? I'll say it when we get to my spin-off movie.
I don't want to say too much. You guys might delete me like Shalene.
What is the fucking name of it's Secreted, please. From here on out, it's Secreted, in honor of Anthony Pellicano. What is the name of the symbiote that fucking Juno Temple's playing?
What the fuck are we talking about?
I don't know. I saw Venom, Let There Be Carnage, the second Venom film.
Let There Be Carbonate?
Yes.
Carnage. Right after seeing No Time to Die. It was a back-to-back press screening situation. Right. They take us to the, IMAX. We see No Time to Die. They, spoiler alert, kill James Bond.
She's playing Scream. The symbiote Scream.
Great. We walk out of there. We're like, oh, that was a choice. Like, this is interesting. And it's
Wait,
like,
Bond
no,
died?
In No Time to Die.
In real
dies.
life?
Yeah, he dies.
Yeah. No, it was based on a true story.
Oh.
And then
Spoiler.
it's like, sit down. Now you watch Venom, Let There Be Carnage. And I was like, I'm not going to engage with this. Like, I don't have time for this right now.
I remember having a fun time.
It was not unfun. I was like, he goes to the club at one point. Remember that?
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, there's stuff.
I miss Eddie. I'm ready for him.
I'm definitely
to come
never
back.
going to get to make anything Venom now by saying what I'm about to say, which
Say
is
it.
that I saw that movie opening night and I don't remember anything about it. And then before I was going on the plane to come here, I was like going through my iTunes to see like movies I bought to like download onto it. And one of the movies I bought was like Venom, Let There Be Carnage. I was like, wait, I bought that? I don't remember it. And I purchased it. So I was like, I need that. I don't remember what happened.
It's the Venom trilogy is like the Hotel Transylvania trilogy, where it's this weird battle between star and director.
Right.
And the first movie is like, we have entirely different ideas of what movie we're making. The second movie, they're like, what if we hire a guy who's like Tom Hardy?
Yes, who will kind of like
is like a
symbiote
weird,
of sorts.
overly businessy actor,
Right.
but also has the CGI experience because people like that part of it.
Right.
And then the third time, they're just like, hire the person who Tom agrees with on everything.
I think the first one, if you chop off everything before Venom appears, I really like. Like everything until Venom appears,
You like when
I'm just
Eddie
like
Brock is a
any
hard-hitting
scene
journalist.
that is no. I'm saying like any scene that's Tom Hardy and him, he's arguing with the symbiote is like super entertaining.
You're
to
saying
me.
before he goes full
Like when he
Venom.
gets in the lobster
Yeah, it's like
tank.
yes. Like the second that like Venom is in frame with him and talking about being losers or like they're doing action together, all of that is a blast. Anything that's not feels like Madame Web, but anything that Venom's in is really entertaining. And it's like the sheer will of him just performing with himself and the physical stuff he really goes for. Like, but until it's there, it's like everyone's bored. They're like, when is Venom showing up? Like, why do we have to do all this other stuff?
I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to predict that our very normal online fans will be less upset that we talked about Venom for 10 minutes in a basic episode than they were when we talked about Becker for 15 minutes
Should we talk about Becker some more?
in a Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance episode.
This episode has no structure. Have we noticed this?
It's basic.
Here's
Well,
the
the
thing
movie's
about
called Basic because it's basic training,
Yes.
and he says murder is
When
basic.
when I realized this movie's set in basic training, I go, okay, now it's kind of a good title. But
it's
even
a good title. It's
when-
just a bad title to put on a poster.
it's a horrible title to put on a poster. And
Right.
it has aged worse. It now has like more weight in terms of slang of just being a write-off. But I just remember seeing the poster with these two faces and the title basic and going like, could they really not even bother?
Right.
Well, I have a rule, which is that if there's a great title for a movie that's 2 words, you can't make a title for another movie using one of the words. So they made
Basic
Basic and they
Instinct.
made Instinct,
Right.
which
Yes.
it's like neither of those are titles on their own. Together, yes. It's like
Yes.
there's not a movie Total and there's not a movie Recall.
But Total Recall
Yeah,
is one
great.
hell of a movie.
So, like, I think you have to retire the words as singular titles.
I think that's a good take.
Once you have a really good 2-word title.
Yeah.
That's my whole take, and I'm about to leave. Like, Blues Brothers, you can't have Blues and you can't have Brothers. Oh, they did have Brothers.
They did have brothers. Connie Nielsen was in Brothers.
I like 4 Brothers.
Ugh, Connie Nielsen.
We'll talk about Connie Nielsen.
We're going to talk about it right now because we're going to talk about the film Basic. A 2003 mystery action thriller directed by John McTiernan and written by James Vanderbilt.
Yes, his splashy kind of debut film, his calling card screenplay that got him in, right?
He's also credited on Cherry, Darkness Falls, and The Rundown this year.
This
is
year.
only him.
I'm in college at the time, and I just started writing my first screenplays. I moved to LA when I was 2005. And
when you were 2005, that was you had embodied the year 2005.
Yes, that was my nickname.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what that means. It seems funny, but then it's not. The more I think about it,
no, I like it.
But that was like a guy who you're just like, that is an unbelievable career. Where it's like 2003, I could see 3 movies in a theater. And one of them I liked, one of them I didn't see because it's Jonathan Liebsman, and then the one that is a masterpiece is The Rundown.
Yeah,
like The Rundown. If The Rundown was your best movie, you could have a career forever. And then you decide, I guess I'll also write Zodiac.
But also, if you're a young film nerd who's like looking to break into the business, and you're looking at this guy, you're like, this guy in 1 year, 3 studio releases that are different genres.
Like, how many people bought Final Draft because of that guy? Like, at least me.
Yeah.
Like, it was one of those people where I was just like, that was at that time when, like, I would know the person who wrote every movie that came out in a calendar year. Like, I could, like, in college, I had it, and what happened is, like, my sort of, like, your Griffin box office thing, my memory destroyed. But for a while, I could just say, hey, who shot this movie? They'd say a random movie. I'd say the DP. Oh, who's the director of that? Who wrote it? I could say, like, any domestic release movie. And now I'm like, I think I remember that movie. But at that time, I like everybody. And it's just like, how did that one guy write all 3 of those movies? And like, I really enjoyed Basic, but I thought The Rundown was fucking unbelievable. And it's like one of the strongest out of the gate writing careers ever. And
like 2 out of the 3 movies basically, no pun intended, flop. And then 4 years later, he writes one of the great American films. And then I think everyone was like, wait, so this guy went from being like whiz kid spec script master to then like delivering All the President's Men.
And he was 26 when they were shooting Basic.
Yeah. It has just been this continuing question. I propose with no rudeness, and we talked about this to a certain degree with Zodiac in that episode, but like, wait, who is this guy?
The Basic script is good. I read it.
I believe it. And I'm very excited that you read it. We have become friends over the last couple of years. You've been a very kind supporter of the podcast. And in conversations, when you and I go out and we drink too much, you'll often we'll talk about careers, the way David and I love to talk about careers. We'll just do it wantonly. And then you'll sort of say, if you ever cover that guy, that's the one I want. Now, someone recently called out in our Reddit that 5 years ago, ARP called his shot on Basic.
Oh, right? Okay.
When his bit used to be
like
pick the least essential.
Yeah.
And I texted ARP last week and I said, like, someone just recalled this, and he went, I think we've all agreed that the brand has changed, the bit has changed.
Yeah, I mean, he can go switch back to that if he wants anytime. It's easy. Yeah.
But he wasn't feeling territorial. He said, like, I'm excited that BenDavid is doing it.
Right.
BenDavid, you, for the last 2 years, have been pulling in a lot of these sort of old school ARP style bids of, if you ever cover this person, that's the one I would want to do.
And it's bullshit.
I mean,
and Basic was an early pin for you.
I don't think that's what happened. I mean, that is what happened with Tom Shadyak's Dragonfly.
Well, you called that this morning.
No, I haven't seen it,
and
but I think it'd be fun to talk about.
welcome you back in year 20 of the podcast to do Dragonfly.
No, that one, I have mentioned ones before. I'm like, if you don't have anybody, I'd really like to do it. But that one was, we were talking about McTiernan at the Tron Bar in Edinburgh.
Correct.
And I just said, a movie's actually pretty underrated is Basic. And you looked at me and go, you're doing it. And I was like, wait, what?
Well, yeah, no.
And you had never said that ever before.
No,
and
but
so, I wasn't saying it that way.
If someone actually has an angle on an under-discussed part of a director's filmography, such as Basic,
right,
then that's an easy booking. We're just like, perfect.
I felt like up until that moment, I had not heard a single person have a strong feeling in any direction about Basic as a movie. And then I had always thought of it as sort of an ultimate movie that doesn't exist.
So you saw this in theaters?
Yeah, so I saw this in theaters. I somehow saw like every movie Brian Van Holt was in that era by accident. Was he like
running the box office?
Like Confidence? What was that movie?
Sure.
Is he in Confidence? Fuck, he is.
Yeah, he was somehow like the fourth lead in every movie that I saw by myself at the theater in my college town.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. The man is a great actor.
He was in Cougar Town, and I dressed as Windy Guy for Halloween one year, where he was a guy who had like his suit where it was like pushed back, and he had like newspapers on his hair, and his hair was gelled back, and his umbrella was backwards.
An incredible sight gag on Cougar Town.
So I went as Windy Guy and acted like I was being blown around a party the whole night. So
it's a great role. He is amazing on Cougar Town.
Yeah,
that was an underrated comic performance on a show that had a lot of underrated comic.
But that's one of my favorite things ever, when you like see a guy in a bunch of movies and you're like, so what is this guy's thing? Like, he's a good actor, he's a character actor. I guess, is he going to be a military guy? And it's like, oh no, he's going to be the funniest guy in a show for 8 years. Like, it's always the guy you don't expect to be the funniest
amazing
guy.
on John from Cincinnati, which is obviously forgotten.
That's the thing I really remember him from. But I mean, I've talked about, I tracked down the Mill Creek Blu-ray of this movie. That's the only physical release it's ever gotten.
I watched it on Netflix on its last day available.
I bought the DVD just to hear the commentary, and which I had and couldn't find, but then I owned it on iTunes and it was on Netflix.
This is a Mill Creek Blu-ray that is out of print with 0 special features. That is 2 movies on 1 disc, and the second movie is SWAT.
Hell, a great movie.
A movie David loves. So I said to him, would you...
Also starring Brian Van Holt.
That's what I fucking finally put together today. I'm like, it's 2003 Brian Van Holt with a gun movie.
I mean, if you throw Confidence on there, you could have all 3. I mean, those are all 2003 movies.
Yes.
So the basic DVD, which I bought, I watched all the special features last week.
Was it special edition or basic?
Oh God, we're gonna run that one into the ground 10 minutes ago.
Have to be done.
We're like Tenet style. We're going in reverse, running into the ground. So the basic special features, the end credits of all of them are that Black Betty cover. So they started to drive me insane.
Jesus.
It'd be like 5 minutes on the writer's process, and then the Black Betty cover, and then the director's process, and then the Black Betty cover, and then the menu was like the Black Betty cover. And I'm like, guys, this didn't work in the movie. Like, why do I have to keep hearing this Black Betty cover on the DVD? But it's that era that is like, I would not have my career or my skill set if there was not for DVD special features. And when I watch them, I'm like, there's too many here. And it also makes me sad where there's so many things on the movie Basic, where there's just like an 18-minute interview with like Vanderbilt talking about like his motivations and rewrites and showing deleted scenes and why he agreed that they were cut, and like, you know, what changed when different people came on the project. And I was like, how does this exist?
I know.
Basic.
For every movie, there was basically that amount put in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do a week, right? Well, like after you're done production or when you're about to premiere.
They should have it for everything, but they just stopped. It's not that difficult. Like, you can shoot stuff on set, do EPK, do whatever.
The thing I mostly want is the commentaries. Like, that's the thing I probably do the most on a physical release, but I like everything.
I'm going to anonymize this.
Wow.
I think you guys both know who I'm talking about. I talked to a very major filmmaker who in recent years has done a lot of work with Netflix about the death of the special features, who made it clear to me that a lot of that material has been delivered to Netflix because for a period of time they were considering it and now have decided against it because they don't think it helps their algorithm. And so there are commentaries and featurettes and all these things for a lot of Netflix original movies that were made a couple years ago that now just sit abandoned.
Let's have them.
Yeah.
I can't tell if this is a brag or embarrassing, but I have to say, you made a comment like that recently on the show where you're like,
you're
like, a friend of the pod said this thing.
Yep.
And I texted you, I'm like, who said that? I agree with him. You're like,
You
that was you.
Yeah.
I was
Sorry.
like,
You
damn
after
it.
3
So
drinks.
you saw Basic in theaters. Griffin, had you ever seen Basic before?
No, I hadn't seen it until last night.
saw
I knew
Basic
nothing.
On an 8-inch TV in the Adirondacks.
Wow.
When it was raining one day.
Perfect basic weather.
Yep. Perfect basic weather. Clearly absorbed none of it because I watched this movie with fresh eyes. Like, I was like, I knew there were twists.
Yeah.
And I think I knew, spoiler alert for Basic, that Samuel L. Jackson was alive at the end. Like, I vaguely remembered that it ended with Travolta like going to hang out with him and being like, ha 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 ha.
We did it.
That's all I remembered though. And this plot is so confusing and twisty and it's sophisticated that I was like, wow, maybe I remember nothing. Maybe it's going to totally surprise me. And then at the end, they were drinking beers together.
Right.
Well, the real issue today, I forgot, and it's not my place to say, but I wanted to encourage people that if you haven't seen it, to not listen to when I said that it makes no sense, because I think it's important on first viewing to think it's going to make sense.
Yes.
Right.
I think that you shouldn't go into it knowing that nothing they're saying actually makes sense or happened.
It is the anti-Inherent Vice. Where, like, Inherent Vice, I believe strongly you need to watch it with the understanding that none of it matters and that you only need to be following it on an emotional character level. Like, the first time I saw that movie, I hated it because I was trying to puzzle it out, and that is not the way to watch that film.
Sure.
This movie, you need to believe that none of this is meaningless or nonsense.
You need to, you can't, the enjoyment of it is thinking it's going to add up.
You have to go along with their charade.
Yeah.
I mean, the poster, which it's like Travolta looking skeptical.
Yeah.
Jackson, he's got kind of like a cape vibe.
I mean, it what looks like the trench coat, which is basically historically Samuel Jackson's greatest co-star across his career, is a long fucking duster. It is in fact a cape or a poncho or whatever.
Poncho, I think. Right. And then there are a bunch of shadowy figures behind Jackson, and it says deception is the most dangerous weapon.
Yeah.
The poster looks like like a movie about Travolta trying to take down like kind of a Black Ops unit like led by Jackson that's gone rogue. The poster should be like, this is mostly set in 2 rooms.
Yes.
Like it's an interview
This
movie.
is like A Few Good Men riff.
Yeah, exactly.
My cultural memory of this movie was that poster. And I remember seeing trailers or TV ads where I'm just like, I just remember guys standing in the rain, screaming, pointing guns at each other. I remember seeing the plane. I have no idea what this movie is other than it's some sort of military intrigue investigation that seems very emotionally wrought. Now, we did our legal draft episode with The Big Picture a couple months ago.
True.
5 years ago now, probably by the time this episode comes out, where I watched A Few Good Men and the new Friedkin Kane Mutiny Court Martial very closely together. And this movie, I would believe you if you told me this was like a black box play that people fucking loved.
Right.
And it was like, it was blowing up in LA. And then they tried to adapt it, and it was a little hard to open up the story for the screen. It feels like not a spec script of like, what's the thing I can do to make my career take off in film? It weirdly, and I'm not saying this is the failing of the script. It's weirdly a failing of the movie that, as you said, it feels like it takes place in 2 rooms.
Basically, with flashbacks.
Yeah.
But hospital bed and random room that Brian Van Holt is in.
And most of the flashbacks are in 2 rooms.
Yeah.
Well, the script was much smaller, and before McTiernan came on, this was a Catherine Keener and Benicio del Toro movie.
That sure was. We're going to talk about that. Yeah. And I like that pitch.
I like that pitch a lot.
And
especially like the Catherine Keener pitch.
Love the Catherine Keener pitch.
But also the drill sergeant guy was a racist white guy who like was not introduced in the beginning and was only in flashbacks, and it's just sort of like, who killed this guy?
Right.
So I think that guy, it's much better if he's a character actor and not the thing. But we'll get into that later about, I think, the pros and cons of putting someone as awesome as Sam in the movie.
Yeah, it does unbalance.
I'm opening the box office.
Not the box office.
The dossier.
That.
Jesus.
Creep.
Yes. The box office is open.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that later.
Can we trust the dossier? Who wrote it? Was it Section 8?
Oh my God, there's a big 8 on the dossier.
Just threw up on me. We've talked about many things that McTiernan was attached to that never happened, right? This is post Rollerball, during Rollerball's production, I guess. Andrew Vanya, who produces many a Schwarzenegger film, obviously, pitches him on Terminator 3, as we discussed on that Patreon episode. And then also pitches him on Basic Instinct 2.
Yes, right.
Which people forget was a David Cronenberg project.
Yes.
That was, immediately fell apart because he and Sharon Stone didn't get along.
Yeah.
Stunning that there might be some issues there.
Basic Instinct 2, a classic, like, they really tried to make the A version of that movie. They could not figure it out, and then realized that they had constructed contracts where they were going to have to pay Sharon Stone's $17 million for not making the movie.
Right.
And they were like, let's just make the shitty version. Like, we
They
just
made
make
it
the
with
most
poor old David Morrissey.
absurd, ridiculous version of this movie because otherwise we're just taking a complete bath.
Well, I was told that McTiernan got really far down the road on Basic Instinct 2 and then at the last minute quit and jumped to this.
I can tell you exactly that because Benjamin Bratt was his chosen star.
He said the title has 2 words too many. Can we just call it Basic? I'm sorry, go on.
He was very high on Bratt's Traffic performance.
Makes sense.
Bratt is very good in Traffic.
Makes sense.
And was like, this guy's a movie star. Bratt decides not to do the movie, decides to instead make the Stephen Gaghan movie Abandon, which is mostly forgotten, I would say. And so then McTiernan turns to Pierce Brosnan, which I love. I mean, not that movie's ever going to be good. I mean, like, who knows? But, like, you know, certainly the script that we are working with, I think, is pretty bad.
I think any sexy thriller that looks like a McTiernan movie that has Pierce Brosnan in it, I would watch 8 times.
It's a compelling notion.
I think he pitched also, like, what if we don't make it Basic Instinct 2? What if we literally call it Risk Addiction?
Yes.
It has a Basic Instinct vibe, and it's Pierce and Sharon.
But you do a Runaway Bride, basically. I mean, obviously not the same 2 stars, but you just go, like, it's Sharon doing her thing again.
And he has this whole pitch of like maybe, you know, I don't know. The Bratt pitch at least was like the character can be Cuban and he's seduced by wealth and luxury, not just the woman.
Okay.
Like he has lots of ideas. Eventually, yes, he probably just sees the writing on the wall of like, this is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like you're following up a big hit. You're working with someone who has their own stake in the project. Like it's not going to work out. He runs away from it.
That was so cursed that Robert Downey Jr. turned down the opportunity to be
in the early 2000s.
Yes.
Right, when, there's another movie called The Extractors. Do you guys know this movie?
I don't think so.
Written by Kevin Fox and James DeMonico, who wrote The Negotiator. It's about a group of ex-cons who break prisoners out of jail for a price. Sounds kind of cool.
Yeah.
He wants to make it with Samuel L. Jackson. That sounds fun. Doesn't happen.
Interesting.
And he also circles a movie written by Leslie Dixon, who wrote Thomas Crown, called Smoke and Mirrors, which is the thing about the guy that Houdini's name is based on.
Right.
Jean-Robert Houdin.
Talked about this. Yes.
And he wanted Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones to be in it.
Yes.
Doesn't happen. Okay. That's McTiernan. James Vanderbilt. So do you know James Vanderbilt?
No. I mean, like, we follow each other on Twitter, which I would never call something else, which will probably not even exist by the time this episode comes out.
Or we will own it. It'll be one or the other.
No, it's just been, you know, one of those people who are like, that guy's awesome for a very long time. But yeah, I'm sort of just fascinated by his career and his output. And it's one of those guys who's just like, it's like multiple movies that could just be like the only cool movie you made.
Yeah.
He graduates from USC and he sells this screenplay for about $500,000.
He's like 25 at the time?
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice work if you can get it. There was a big bidding war about it. Lee Tamahori is the original director. Coming off of Along Came a Spider, I think.
Correct. Who also at one point was supposed to do Basic Instinct 2. Like, I find the soup of all of these.
It's so true. And it's in this last gasp era of these R-rated thrillers.
Right.
With older movie stars.
But
I mean, every movie has a list of the same 10 guys who they go to if they're available.
But this real, like, McTiernan's on a downswing. Tamahori seems like he might be on an upswing. They're still trying to make R-rated thrillers for grown-ups with movie stars. All this money's getting slushed around. And then it's like, do they have to be sequels to old things? Whatever. Go on.
Del Toro and Keener.
That's announced. It's like announced in Variety.
Del Toro's just won his Oscar. Keener just is coming off of like being John Malkovich, etc. Right? Like,
you know what's wilder than that? Because I looked up the Variety story announcing Keener and Del Toro in talks for Lee Tamahori's Basic. The story calls out there's a lot of buzz about his role in the upcoming Steven Soderbergh film Traffic.
Yeah.
They announced that he's being cast in the lead up to Traffic's release.
Right. Yeah. It's Traffic buzz. You're right.
It's Traffic buzz. Which would have
beep, beep, honk,
fucking,
honk. Right.
I mean,
but I do know that movie version was supposed to be like a quarter of the budget of what this one was.
Right. It was that, which makes sense.
Probably would have been to everyone's benefit.
No, I mean, I love how McTiernan executed this, but I think that this movie inherently should have been a smaller character sort of thing, you know?
I mean, you can speak to this, not to just briefly pause the context here, but like my thing about this feeling like it was adapted off a play is not a slam about the script being stagey. I read it as, here is a young guy writing a script that he thinks could feasibly get produced, right? If you're trying to like put your calling card scripts out there, you can write a fucking spec script for 150 million budget thing, but that's a huge swing. If you write a basic that is just like, oh, on the page, this thing's exciting, it's got twists, it's got snappy dialogue, and you could probably make it for X amount.
I mean, I think it's funny. The first script that I ever sold, like back in 2006, was something that I thought was going to be like a very small, just a couple people in a room movie. And then a studio bought it, and they spent all this time like being like, should it be John Heder? Should it be Eddie Murphy? Should it be this director? Should it be this? And the whole time I'm like, I just don't know if this works big. And then it fell apart. And like 15 years later, the producer on it I ran into, and he's like, later I realized that should have been like a Sundance movie. And I was like, well, that's sort of what I was thinking at the time, is that there's some movies where the best version of it is tiny. And like, at what point do we want to talk about what happens in the script? Should we just get that out of the way now?
Let's get through the rest of the context.
I don't want to blow your structure.
Yeah.
No. You're not blowing anything. Relax. Who cares? Like you say, Intermedia gives them more money, and so suddenly it's like, okay, this needs to have stars.
And I think a lot
in
of it
September
too,
2001, a terrible thing happens. John Travolta and Samuel Jackson are cast in this movie. No, I'm kidding.
Great joke, nailed it. 5 comedy points. No, I just want to say
Ben didn't like that.
It's another thing that fucks up the size of this movie is like when it's a hot script and there's a bidding war and they're paying this much for the script after like a fight for the rights.
Yes.
Then whoever gets it is going to be like, well, this is now a major movie.
Right.
In our mind, we fought for this. This was a jump ball.
Right.
We're not going to make this as a $5 million drama.
Now, as BenDavid said, did you say this on mic? Vanderbilt says this was written as a Hardy Boys homage.
Well, I said that, like, yeah, that he was called Tom Hardy because he always wanted this to be like inspired by his love of Hardy Boys books. Yeah,
do the Hardy Boys investigate murders, or isn't it just like someone left some treasure in a cave or something? I've never read a Hardy Boys book.
They're usually based in Rashomon and during a hurricane.
It's kind of about like, you know, racial dynamics within a military unit,
propeller interrogations. No, I feel like the Hardy Boys will have the like, someone's dead, and then the twist at the end is they're not. I mean, which is what this fucking movie does. You know, like, I think any threat of death in a Hardy Boys story has to be undone ultimately by the end. A lot of missing. Case of the missing blank.
He's more interested, he says, in writing a murder mystery than like a military thriller.
Sure.
So it's the military side he has to kind of like research and build out. Like he structures a screenplay that's like, okay, twist here, twist here, twist here. Right? It's like a murder mystery thing. So he's reading all about like Army Rangers, right? And how military interrogation works, I guess. Like that's the stuff. But I do think it's wise because like military, you can kind of get away with a lot of stuff.
Totally.
Like they do seem to just have their own rules, right? Or at least audiences can buy like, yeah, the cops won't get involved in this.
Right. My
like, they'll
perception
figure it out.
Is
right.
that they have their own rules, which is probably wrong.
It might be a slightly like facile way of thinking about it, but that's kind of
it's what
true.
I've learned from the movies,
right?
and it's why movies can still keep pulling that shit on me.
Yes. He wanted with Hardy to make an atypical action hero. He hasn't shaved. He drinks, right? The audience
atypical hero. Sounds like you've just described John McClane, the guy you helped create, who then became a prototype.
No, but Vanderbilt wants this.
Vanderbilt.
Like,
gotcha.
you know,
sorry.
This isn't yet McTiernan.
Okay.
But in the initial script, apparently, Hardy is the villain. This is what you're referring to, right, BenDavid? Like, it's like he killed West.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that he's a villain, but he did kill him and cover it up, and they all work together.
He did the whodunit.
Yeah, because in the script, if I remember correctly, I haven't read it in a bit, you realize the way it was originally constructed is that Sam Jackson's character was in on the drug thing, and Travolta had an axe to grind because he had worked under him a long time ago, but everyone was sort of bad on some level, but he was sort of a bad guy killing a bad guy and covering it up. And the movie ended with his character in Travolta's character's trunk.
Yes, right.
And
he's been there the whole time.
Yeah, like he's basically been dead in his trunk the whole time, and you find out like on the last page of the movie. And I think it's one of those things where McTiernan was right that if Sam Jackson is that character, you can't do that.
The first time they meet, he's like, we just can't do that. We can't kill Sam Jackson.
But it's like the problem that he's created by casting Sam Jackson, which is like you want more Sam Jackson, you want scenes with him and Travolta together, but it's also like a much more simpler movie to not have the Section 8 stuff. Like all the Section 8 stuff is invented to create an additional twist,
right?
To not have it end with Sam Jackson dead in a trunk.
The Section 8 thing is so fucking stupid.
Yes.
I don't mind because, like we've all been saying, it's just sort of like, okay, like, this movie's not been good enough for me to object too hard. But yeah, there's just like, yeah, we're Section 8. We kill we pretend to die and then we deal with problems. I'm like, but now you faked your death.
But also,
you can't like reappear.
The thing where Connie Nielsen is walking down like Bourbon Street in slow motion,
right? And
she looks up and she sees the giant inflatable 8-ball and like dunk dunk happens on the score. Feels like when a single camera 2000s comedy show parodies a movie with too many twists.
Well, when she says her whole thing about Infinity or Section 8 on the commentary, McTiernan said, "Oh, they just did the X-Files theme in the score. Oh, the composer threw that in without me realizing it." And it's like, it feels to me...
a lot of off the rack.
Like, the thing that McTiernan is so good at is, one, he says he is always trying to make a boy's adventure. But two, he's the king of making movies that could be dark but feel joyful. Like, if you think about all of his best movies, there is this thing I get, this jolt of happiness from watching them.
Totally.
And it's all designed for him because he's like, I want to have the movie end with you leaving being like, yeah, but this is not that kind of movie. I think the best version of Basic makes you leave kind of bummed out. And I think that he found to him what was the best way to make a version of this story that had kind of a fun twist ending where it's kind of like, these people are all friends now and they're going to go on an adventure and yay, movies, which is usually my favorite way to feel after a movie. But with this, it feels forced. It feels like you're doing a dark murder mystery, but at the end, it's like kind of Scooby-Doo.
If Del Toro is playing this character and it turns out he has a body in his trunk, the audiences would walk out being like, that makes sense.
But Del Toro killing a racist white drill sergeant.
It's a different vibe.
You're like, okay, I get it.
There'd be kind of a nasty buzz. Like, people would be a little amped up by the Tarantino-esque, I watched something that feels a little uncomfortable.
I do think McTiernan and Travolta both are right, because Travolta also was like, he can't be an out-and-out villain. Like, no, Travolta can't have killed Samuel L. Jackson. People would hate that. Like,
No, but also in this weird era of Travolta, like, clearly wanting to play more villainous, wanting to play heel, like you get the sort of face-off dip the toe in the water of having it both ways, but it's like this is coming off of Swordfish. He's in this like, can I be a piece of shit mode?
Look, I have a Travolta, I have something on that.
When I watched this movie to prepare,
and I recently rewatched Swordfish.
When I watched this movie to prepare for the pod on a plane a couple of months ago, I brought this and Swordfish on a plane and watched them back to back, and that was wild. I'm like, I'm the only person on a plane who's ever watched Basic and Swordfish back to back, and it was a very wild way to look at that point in his career, which we can get into later if we want.
Well, you know what? Now we just have to get right into it because yes, we have to talk about. We're post Battlefield Earth. So obviously there's been a relatively recent public humiliation of John Travolta after his genuine bounce back post Pulp Fiction, obviously.
And sorry, my only other question, just in terms of placing this in context, when does this start filming?
Okay, well,
because of Rollerball being pushed back, I'm curious about when this happens.
Well, then I have to go back to the dossier. All right. I don't know.
You can't trust the dossier.
I would say reopen the dossier. I would say this is not.
No, I know, but
an incredibly complicated task.
Griffin, it is because we were still on casting, and I was going to do a Travolta thing. We're not in production yet, which is later in the dossier.
Okay.
I don't know when it was.
Then
shot.
You know what? I will open up the dossier.
It doesn't. He doesn't say. He blew it. Section 8 blew it. It doesn't say when they started, like what year they started production.
I'm gonna.
But when does Rollerball come out?
Rollerball comes out in 2002, but was
Yeah,
supposed
but
to come out in
when in
2002.
2002? February.
I will look all this up.
My guess is they shoot this after it comes out. Because, like, how long could they have possibly worked on Basic? No offense to it.
Say the point that you were going to make, and I'm going to try to do the math
No,
on all this.
Travolta is a whole thing. Are we ready to open
I'm
the
ready
Travolta
to talk
box?
about the Travolta box.
So, like, 90s Travolta, right?
Mhm.
Post Pulp Fiction. Get Shorty. Michael, we've discussed. But was a hit, right? Was
Michael's a hit. Yeah.
Phenomenon, a hit.
Yeah.
Broken Arrow, a hit.
Reasonable hit. Yeah.
Face Off, a hit.
Big hit.
Civil Action didn't do that well, but got okay reviews.
Yeah.
People forget, of course, he's in every scene of The Thin Red Line.
He's all over that fucking movie.
Primary Colors, a hit. And
Yeah.
critically acclaimed.
Well,
actually,
no,
did
that was not a
okay.
hit.
But
That
it
was
did
not a hit.
critically acclaimed.
Critically
It gets
acclaimed.
award attention.
But was a box office
General's Daughter, a genuinely nasty movie, a hit.
$100 million summer blockbuster.
But what is his persona at this point, right? Like,
impossible to pin down.
This is what I'm trying
This
to
is what's
throw
so
to you guys.
weird about. I'm glad we're getting into this.
And
because-
obviously, we've discussed Lucky Numbers as well, which is a little before this.
Yeah. But it is weird how successful and beloved he is for that run where you're like, can you go to any person on the street and have them define
Like, what
what
will
we
he
like
do?
about John Travolta?
Because it's BenDavid, do you have a take on this? Like, because I think I do.
He's also not a chameleon. It's not like,
No.
oh, he throws himself into these weird things. Part of what I like is I never know what he's going to do next. And you're like, he's got a real specific vibe as a performer, but then he's applying it in very weird directions.
But my take is that
and disparate directions.
once he was doing well again, he sort of felt like, well, this is always going to work. And he stopped sort of working in things that felt airtight or really exciting.
Playing with house money now.
And it's really a point of like, oh, well, we're going to pay you a lot of money. And he's like, oh, I think that could be cool. Oh, I like that guy.
The confidence is good, I would say, especially for like a Broken Arrow or a Face Off, or even a Civil Action, where it's like, yeah, you're playing a big personality, right? You're kind of funny, you're kind of annoying, but people roll with it, right? Like something like Get Shorty, you're like, that's actually a really honed comic performance. Like,
perfect.
He's playing a guy who is really locked down and kind of scary. He's genuinely threatening. He's very funny. Like, that's a great comic performance. Primary Colors, I think, is a pretty great comic performance.
Yeah.
Where he's playing a really flawed guy who you're kind of with in the movie, and the whole point is you fall out of love with him, right?
Yes.
Like, much like the main character. By the end, you're like, I know why people like this guy, but I have sort of come to learn how flawed he is. Face Off, Broken Arrow, I like these performances, but this is more just him being like, I can go how big? Like this? This?
I think you're getting to the heart of the thing.
Yes.
I think you're right, which is he has this insane comeback thing, right? And I've talked about this before. In previous episodes, I've talked about that I feel the framing of Tarantino saved Travolta from oblivion is incorrect because the Look Who's Talking movies were so fucking big. And older listeners will be like, you don't understand. That didn't matter. He was not a serious movie star.
No.
Which I agree with. I think
But he was a movie star.
But he was in movies.
I think the better analogy is like pre-McConaissance McConaughey, where it's like this guy had 10 years of hits that no one respected, that then started to wane off, where it's like
he's
now
gotten bumped down a couple tiers.
totally,
Yeah,
but he's still an above the title guy. It wasn't that long ago that it was, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days rather than Ghosts of Girlfriends Past.
Yeah.
And when he started being good again, it was like, oh shit, he's back to A-list, and also we take him seriously now. So Pulp Fiction is coming off of his biggest hit, but it's a hit that didn't give him any credibility.
None at all.
No.
Like, if anything, it may have hurt his credibility, even if it raised his quote.
It made him seem silly, and it's sort of the kind of movie where I think the studios almost go, oh, that's like a movie star that dumb people like in silly movies.
If you look at his his 90s post Pulp Fiction, there are no flops.
No.
There are movies that get less good reviews or
Mad
whatever.
City, White Man's Burden. White Man's Burden doesn't really count because that was shot before Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, I mean, and that movie is insane. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah, that movie is...
But that one doesn't count.
Just quickly, just to get your response on Mike, do you know what White Man's Burden is?
It's thinking emoji, the movie, if you want.
I'm not familiar with
It's one of your classic Travolta, Harry Belafonte two-handers.
Tell him the premise.
Sure.
I want you to understand, this is the movie Travolta has in the can when he does Pulp Fiction.
And it's produced by Lawrence Bender. It was a Jersey movie. Yeah.
And the premise is, what if we lived in a society where black people were racist to white people.
Like black people are on top and white people are not.
You don't have to explain it.
No,
I
let me explain it
understand.
some more. So like the rich guys are black people.
This insane what if.
Yes.
And that's it. That's the movie's whole take on that. Is
Belafonte
like
lives in a mansion and he's like, who's this dirty white man outside on my lawn? And they get into a fight.
it's legit that approach.
That
It's
is
just
the
like
movie.
with the rich guys, and you're like, oh, do you have any more for me on this? No,
This wasn't
not really.
this wasn't a porch movie.
Absolutely not. And I want to be really crystal clear as far as what my take is on this thing I just heard about for the first time. It sounds like trash.
Yeah.
And I have zero interest in ever engaging with it.
Yes.
I watched it on TV.
This movie-
it's interesting.
But like that movie comes out the same year as Get Shorty, right? It's like
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction. Holy shit. Travolta, Oscar nomination. Get Shorty. What a good follow-up. Has Travolta figured it out? Like Get Shorty, Pulp Fiction back to back. You're like, does he know who 40-something Travolta is to a T? Is he picking the exact right material? Is his movie star persona so honed? White Man's Burden. Everyone's like, we all agree to just ignore this.
Forget that one.
John Mulligan, it's fine.
In 96, he makes 4 hits.
Yeah.
Michael, hit. Phenomenon, hit. Broken Arrow, hit. Orientation, a Scientology information film. They
Hit.
show that to this day.
The
That thing is
residuals on that
watched.
thing.
And then, in 97, Mad City is not a hit, but like you're going to do a Costa
That's fine.
Gavras movie with Dustin Hoffman.
She's so lovely. Same kind of deal of like, oh, it's like unmade Cassavetes script. Don't you
got
want
like
to do
a
that?
SAG nom.
I actually think he's quite good in that film.
he is.
Yeah.
And then 98, like Civil Action
Face
is
Off,
not a
huge
hit.
hit,
but
like,
he's
covers
good
those
in
two.
that movie.
Yeah. And once again, like gives him credibility.
Face Off is in my top 5 of all time, so no one's allowed to talk shit while I'm in
Face
New
Off
York
rocks.
City.
Absolutely
I
not.
like Face Off more than him.
I love Face Off. I just prefer Con Air.
Which
This
is
is
an
the hot
insane
fuzz argument
opinion.
all over again.
But it doesn't.
Insane opinion.
Con Air is great, but what the
Yes.
fuck?
I'm just telling you what my
Con
taste
Air is like a lot of fun.
It's
Face
not
Off
a value
is
judgment.
Face
special.
I'm
Off-
just telling you what
Face
my
Off
taste
is one of the best American action movies ever made,
Yes.
even though it's not made by an American. And Con Air is awesome. I love Con Air, but it's not like a great action movie. Although it's one of the best ensemble casts of all time.
Con Air
Yes.
has an amazing cast.
That's probably why I like it more, because it's character actor city.
There are character actors in Face Off.
I mean,
Connor has more character actors than any movie has ever had, doing
got a few.
insane shit.
there's
got a
really good actors having a really good time in Face Off.
Both
I
movies
love
have
Face Off.
both movies have a lot of ideas.
Both movies have extensive face surgery, right? Oh, no,
Yeah.
it's just Face Off that has that. Right?
1997, man. Like how those movies just came out months apart. I love that just like when they put Nicolas Cage in The Rock, it's like, what if we put this guy who has no business being in an action movie in it, and that'll give it such a unique energy. And within months, he's like, I'm ripped and I'm a
Right.
fucking action
I
star.
make these now.
And it's like,
Yes.
yeah, dude.
But let's throw out Travolta and Cage as counterpoints, right? Where it's like
Okay.
Cage, weirdo actor, gets his 90s legitimacy
Wins the
Oscar.
Oscar.
It's now like, oh, fuck, is this guy a conventional A-list movie star? And he's the weirdest version of a movie star, but he makes his brand, you don't know what the fuck I'm gonna do, right? Like, to a certain degree, he makes his brand chaos. And it's like, I'm gonna do everything. And what people look for is the energy and the surprise, and sometimes he takes huge swings that don't work. Travolta is not stretching that far, but it also feels like he has no handle on what his thing is. And what's wild is that, as you said, like in a year like 96, you're like, Michael Phenomenon, Broken Arrow. Are any of those exactly what he should be doing? We can debate it, but audiences are buying all three. 1998, Civil Action, Thin Red Line, Primary Colors. None of those movies really connect at the box office. Only 2 of them is He the Guy. But I think the industry is like, look, he's making interesting choices. We're not going to ding him any points for doing a fucking Nichols movie and a legal thriller and like one scene in a Malick film. General's Daughter, huge hit for what you said is a super dark movie that shouldn't be commercial, is not good.
You know, it's not good. It's
It's your
directed
favorite
by Simon
director, though.
West, though,
Yeah.
who you fucking love and apparently are.
You just said it's
gonna-
better than John Woo?
It's better than Face Off. Yeah.
But here's my thing about that was all lead up to
2000.
2000's Travolta,
Exactly.
where it feels like the note he has taken from those years is like, you guys want like Broken Arrow. That's all that you want from me. You want me to be really big, charismatic, but in kind of like a slimy way, and like every role he does. Lucky Numbers we can set aside for a second, but that is kind of in that. Like
Totally.
domestic disturbance.
Unsavory.
Unsavory. Domestic
Yeah.
disturbance, swordfish, basic.
Gold member.
And himself as Austin who is he playing?
He's playing
Goldmember.
Goldmember.
Goldmember, right? Himself as Goldmember, right? In Goldmember, like it's just like, why is that the only role you're now doing, buddy?
And
like,
how quickly you get to 2004, and it's like you're the villain in The Punisher,
right. It's like now everyone assumes you have a soul patch,
and
even
you're
if
not
you
even
don't.
the lead anymore.
Right.
As much as we all love overthinking this stuff, the thing about him, where I kind of don't think too much about Travolta in that way, is that Saturday Night Fever is so big. It'd be like if you made an album that sold 200 million copies and you don't really need to go on tour anymore.
Yes.
And sometimes you're like, I miss being a star. Oh, it's
Right.
great. I'm winning awards.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to keep being a star. Oh, I like doing this. It's like he will always be John Travolta, and there'll be ebbs and flows and whatever.
They'll still let him present at the Oscars every year, even when he can't
so
talk.
good at reading cue cards. I mean, come on.
But I think the thing is, it's like the only thing in the trajectory of his career that really like stands out in terms of like changes is that Quentin's a guy who's like, Blowout is amazing, and his performance in it is god level. That's why I want to put him in here. He's not just who is a star I can get.
Totally.
Whereas almost 99% of his movies are, we need a movie star. Is Travolta still a star? Oh, he is. Great. Let's get Travolta. Like, it's not usually as laser focused.
I think that's true.
Who's a guy who you put above
he
the
still
title?
counts as an above the title guy.
Yeah.
Swordfish to me is just the nexus of so many things, though.
Yeah.
Because Swordfish is a movie where Hugh Jackman is the lead of the film and is the handsome good guy, right?
As a hacker who really should be like a John Hawkes style guy or like Scoot McNairy.
100%.
Yeah.
And instead
But it's
he's like
Hugh Jackman.
Wolverine bod,
Yes.
lives in an Airstream trailer. You want to fuck him every second he's on screen.
Halle Berry
Like-
can't stop showing him her boobs.
She shows him her boobs for 1 second, but yes.
But it's part of the plot. She's trying to trick him into thinking she's a DA agent,
Yes.
but she's really working with Travolta.
Not to reveal the twist of Swordfish, but I'm about to. Swordfish has the same twist as Basic, where Travolta in the end and Halle Berry are like, we're part of a secret agency that does something.
I'm actually kind of a good guy.
Right. What do you do? I don't know. Don't worry about it. Goodbye. But like, he's the direction there, either from him or from the great Dominic Sena or whoever, is like, slime ball. Give me slime ball.
I mean, in this movie, in Basic, he has the scene where I'm watching the first 10 minutes of this performance. I go, what the fuck is Travolta doing? And then he says to Connie Nielsen, I bet you didn't expect me to be a scumbag, huh? And I'm like, that's what this is?
Now, here's the only thing. I think you don't like this performance.
I don't.
I think it's great.
I think it's a good time.
I love
already
it.
used my Ponyo joke about it. I think I love it. I'm having a really good time, but I don't feel like he is selling a guy who is charming the girl. No, he's
not.
charming me. He is charming
That's
the
thing.
audience.
I'm like, wow, this is what you're doing.
I'm
definitely not like, wow, women love.
Yeah, that's the only thing. I love everything he's doing in the movie. I just don't.
I think it's in the wrong movie.
I know. I think the movie that they're making, this is it. I just don't like when So I just watched Thomas Crown Affair again, and the first scene with Rene Russo and Pierce Brosnan is like, I was levitating.
Yeah.
Like they're bickering with each other, and I'm like, they clearly kind of like each other, but they don't. Like this, like I love in any movie where a guy and a girl like, I don't like you either. I'm like, but they're gonna. But there's
When the
never a
chemistry
second.
is
But
there.
there's never a second in this movie where he's like kind of hitting on her, where I'm like, she's gonna like it.
No.
All right, so who is? This is my argument for Travolta in this movie is, I'm trying to think of
I
like
have my argument.
No, I want to hear yours too. But like, so who's the boring guy who could play this role, a little more straightforwardly in 2003? Like, forget Del Toro, because Del Toro is he's not boring. He's gonna do his own thing.
I'm going to tell you exactly who I think should have played this at the point where the script got
Give it
too
to me.
big and it had to be this level. Bruce.
Well, okay, that's actually a great answer.
Thank
okay.
you.
So, but
the moment we got to the scumbag line, I went, oh, fuck, this character needs to be David Addison from Moonlight.
right. So, but here's the thing about Bruce.
Moonlighting,
So,
excuse me.
no, he's in Moonlight as well.
Right.
He's in the background. You don't really see him much.
He's the one white guy in Moonlight.
What's Bruce Willis doing in 2003? Like, what's a Willis film around then?
Tears of the Sun.
Well, so memorable. I mean,
This is what
good
I'm
Lord.
saying. Flip of the coin.
Right, like Heart's War, Tears of the Sun. Right.
Yeah.
It's not exactly a glowing. I love Bruce Willis. I do.
Yes.
I do think he would play this straightforward, a little more straightforward, right?
My pitch, and part of why I'm pitching him, is because it is McTiernan, and I want to believe that their history would get it out of him, right? That like the early section of him going more David Addison than McClane, of like, I'm fucking, look at me, I'm like charming everybody, this and shit.
Right.
Like, I'm like, that would be fucking Bruno, right? And then I believe that Bruce would sell at the end the like, no, I'm like serious.
I think there's a problem with the character as it stands in terms of the deception, which is I want this character to be like McClane in Die Hard with a Vengeance, where he's hungover but has to do a thing.
Yes, yeah.
But because this guy is lying the whole time and really playing everybody, it's like I don't want like the guy who's pretending he's not Kaiser Soze to also be pretending to be hungover, and then you realize he's like lying the whole time. Like I think that this movie, I wish that the guy was just a hungover guy who's kind of sleazy, who accidentally is like, oh my God, my friend did this? Oh, this thing is happening?
Well, and I agree. In 2003, you're getting to the era where you run the risk of Bruce being totally checked out, right? It goes either way.
He's a little checked out in a lot of the movies around this time. And if you're getting checked out, Bruce, then you're relying more on the structure and twists of this movie.
Which I don't think would
Which I
benefit
think
them.
would be bad. And I think
I'm
Travolta
imagining the version where
he's like a
McTiernan
knuckleballer
cattle
who
process.
doesn't even know what the strike zone is.
Yes.
Every pitch is interesting. None of them are strikes. You know what I mean? Like his approach to every scene, you're like, well, I don't think that's the approach, buddy, but I'm enjoying you trying this.
I want to circle back to, I do think there's some weird transference thing that happens from him being given permission in 1997 to pretend to be Nicolas Cage, an actor who could get away with shit that no one else could get away with, and sometimes would flop wildly, right? To boos and jeers from America.
Sure.
But like had that sort of like just electric insanity.
I have a hot take, though, which is I think they should have switched parts. I think Sam Jackson should have been the lead and Travolta should have been the general.
I think that's an incredibly good take.
Here's the whole thing with Basic. I think it just needs to be made 10 times.
Yes.
I think we need to go back in 2003 and be like, you have the budget to make this film 10 ways. One's going to have Bruce. One, you're going to swap John and Sam. We'll have the Del Toro Keener one. You're going to lose 10 mil from the budget. Yeah. We're going to try them all. There's a lot we can do with Basic.
And David, I want to loop you into this. David and I recently had a very provocative text conversation.
Oh,
when
no.
I had rewatched Changing Lanes.
Okay.
And so badly wanted to, on revisit, go like, this thing's quietly an 8.
Yeah.
And I was like, this thing remains a 5 with 7 moments and qualities.
I'm going to give it a 6 with 7 moments, but sure.
Yeah. It's a gentleman 6.
It's
so
not
7.
quite as
Does it
great
have
as one.
7 moments in the movie, or moments that are rated 7?
Moments that hit 7 or 8.
Okay.
Maybe even get to 8.
Yeah, I'd say
it hits 8 a couple
I think you're right.
times.
I think it's a baseline 6 with flashes of 8.
Right.
Which makes it a little more frustrating that it's not an 8 all the way.
Right.
Which is why I wanted to rewatch it and discover, in fact. And my take that we were kicking back and forth was like, I wish Changing Lanes had been made in 1947 and was a movie that was remade every 20 years with 2 different stars of the moment. Because if we were in an era where we were up to our 6 Changing Lanes, 1 or 2 of them would be great.
And
So
we changing
like,
it should be like The
Born.
Star is Born. Yeah.
Right. And we were like, it's a shame we didn't get the fucking Sidney Poitier, Ernest Borgnine Changing Lanes.
Right.
It's a shame we don't now today have. We had one.
We really needed Changing Lanes that was actually directed by John Peters. Like,
with Barbara.
Yeah.
And Diana Ross.
Oh, man.
Yeah, you had that one. Let's see. Who else? I feel like we had a couple others. Because there is.
Oh, I said Poitier and Paul Newman.
Right. Jake, I said, you said it would now be like Michael B. Jordan and Barry Keoghan or something.
I mean, not terrible.
Not terrible. Weiger pitched Gene Wilder and Yaphet Kotto.
I mean, come on.
I think the listeners need to know that you have the Austin Powers collectible card game thing
sure.
on your desk.
Tim Robbins.
The desktop display.
I keep forgetting what I'm going to say when I see it. I'm like, I want to play that.
I could turn it the other way so it's not distracting, but also you can get some dupes on the way out. That's your door prize for doing the show.
Oh, hell yeah.
So
Travolta.
I'll just to give you some dossier stuff on Travolta.
Sure.
He did train with the 75th Ranger Regiment.
You can tell.
Yeah, you can really
There's a
tell.
specificity and a discipline to
The
this
guy just
performance.
screams military.
Yes.
He says,
military scumbag.
it's a pretty good quote from him. It was tough because I'm not a big fan of all that hard stuff like dieting and getting in shape. I was willing to do it. In fairness to myself, I started 3 years ago for Swordfish, but I also wanted to keep in shape for the kids. I'm gonna move
he's
along in the quote
introduced
here.
in this movie with a shirtless scene.
He is. Look, I would love to have Travolta's bod in this movie. I am not shaming his bod in this movie. Leading with his bod in this movie is an odd choice.
Yes, it's also odd to present it as I did the tough work and trained for 3 years for basic.
I don't know how to comment on it because I can't. I wish I looked like him in this movie.
We all wish we looked like him.
He looks totally fine.
But he's a few degrees off from like how he thinks he's coming across to Connie Nielsen. Like when he's like laying on the table and spreading himself out. Like it feels like he's like, this is me and staying alive. When it's,
there is a swagger to this performance that, yes, suggests it's him and staying alive, essentially wearing a loincloth. When I'm like, Travolta, you look fine. You do not look like some kind of like masculine apex, which is how the character carries himself. But maybe that's good. That's how I keep coming around on Travolta, where I'm like, maybe the self-inflation just works. Like, that's what's good about Travolta. It's the same with Swordfish, where he gives these 10-minute monologues where you're like, you have said 0 thoughts during this entire monologue, but I guess that's what your character is.
I think he's fun in Swordfish. I think in a movie like this...
No, he's not. He's going to throw this
throwing fucking jelly beans at me?
The great thing about Swordfish is that at the end of it, he's cruising around the world on a speedboat with Halle Berry, blowing up terrorists with just his slush money, and he's just never going to get credit for it.
Patch?
Yes, facial hair in that movie is
but
illegal.
he did that to look like another terrorist whose body he found.
It's not
to,
clear
like,
if
fake
he
his
found
death.
the guy's body or made a fake body,
or he styled the body to look like how he wants to look.
Correct. It's not never made clear.
Sure.
Hugh Jackman just stumbles across a fake Travolta body and is like, weird. Wonder what that's about. Anyway,
twist movies, man.
Can we throw another counterpoint?
I just think in Swordfish, you're just like, the fact that you're an idiot works for this.
I don't
know if you know that, but I still am okay with it.
I think it doesn't work for this reason. I think in a movie that is this based on twists, I'm sitting there thinking, is John Travolta so wildly failing to convince me of what this character actually is supposed to be in this movie? Or should I not believe anything this guy is saying because clearly this is all a red herring, misnomer, his whole persona is deflection?
Because the way he behaves in this movie is stupid.
But it actually works, I think, if he's a guy who murdered someone and who's getting away with it and he's cocky. He feels like somebody in a Columbo episode who's like, thinks they're going to get away with it.
He's Shatner.
But...
And he's
the
got
end, but
energy.
you reveal at the end is like he's the general of Section 8. So he's a guy who's doing like 400 levels of deception, and he's not behaving like a guy who is doing that.
There's nothing canny about this.
Okay. If we want, you want to engage with the logic of this movie.
I do.
So let's assume from minute 1, Travolta is the head of Section 8. What does he want? He wants to get these guys out of here as quickly as possible?
So it opens up and he's taking a shower because he's showering off the jungle from the thing he did that we're never very clear on.
Sure.
He was somehow involved in this
But they
exercise.
basically realized that the wings
off the jungle is a really good explanation of the kind of logic this movie operates on.
Well, the wings guy, they suspect him.
This is an episode of The Daily Show.
So they suspect him of being that they need to prove that he's behind this drug thing to take him down. So they do the most elaborate thing anyone has ever done to do it.
Rather than just being like, hey, we hear this guy's shipping coke like through the military. Maybe we should just like check his shipments. Instead, they're like, let's stage a fake
Sam Jackson
military
fakes
exercise
his
gone
death
wrong
as an attempt to solve this. I got to say now, like 4 hours into this podcast, I'm here because McTiernan's in my top 5 directors of all time, and I like this movie, and I just want to feel like I've been hating on it a lot, but we got to talk about how little sense it makes. We just got to.
We have to engage with the fact that the stated premise of this film is that Samuel L. Jackson is a well-known, decades in the, he's been doing this for a long time, drill sergeant who dies or disappears in a training incident.
He's so mean that everyone who's under him
but we
hates
don't
him.
know if that's true or not because
Do you think it's all a lie, like everything they're saying to Connie?
They present it as an Arlie Ermy style. He breaks these kids underneath him to the point where one of them will shoot.
But that
Travolta
does
at one point
not
says,
line
I
up
trained under him when 15 years ago. And
Never
I'm like,
gotten over it.
What age are you supposed to be right now, John?
But
15 years ago?
last...
Did you enter the military age 40? Like, what is this?
But Sam's vibe in the last scene of the movie is so contradictory. That is not a guy who traumatizes people.
No, he's a fucking maximum Corona-ass chiller who hangs out on the fucking French Quarter.
But he's sitting around
and
people.
Like eating crawdads.
This is the argument for them switching
But
roles.
he's sitting around a table with these people. That's what I'm saying. It's like if Sam Jackson in that last scene brought that energy to the Travolta character and was that lead, and then Travolta was hamming it up as this racist drill sergeant, and then at the end they're kind of charming each other. That inversion.
You
make more
want
sense.
the sort of right. You want the Travolta character to have the sort of chaotic energy of like, I can't get a read on this fucking guy.
Which he sort of does.
Well, but you guys are describing the performance in a way of like, he's unhinged and big and it's kind of fun because you can't figure out. And I'm like, he's splayed out atop a table like fucking Michelle Pfeiffer and Fabulous Baker Boys doing jazz hands and being like, I bet you wanna fuck me.
That's what I like. It's the same with him in Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3. The remake, the Tony Scott remake of that movie.
Yes.
Where the Robert Shaw character that he's ostensibly, playing, right? Like in this remake, in the original movie, right, is like cold as ice, barely speaks, like kills people without a twitch, right? And Travolta is like, fuck you, I'm on the phone. Like, you're just like completely over the top.
He's kind of fun in that movie.
I agree. He's flooding the zone with bullshit, and you're like, I can't tell what's a choice and what's just idiocy.
But for this script, that does, I mean, like, of the attempted failed third wave Travolta comeback, right? Which is the sort of late 2000s. Hairspray and Wild Hogs hit hard in the same year. Yep. And everyone's like, is he back again? And then he like triples down into the scumbag thing. Savages and Pelham 1, 2, 3 were the two where people were like, he's kind of fun. He's kind of bringing some energy.
Okay, so that Tony Scott is the king of making movies that I spent several years being like, I love all of his movies except for these two. And then I watch those two again. I'm like, they're so fucking good. So I watched Pelham 1, 2, 3 where they played it at New Bev as this Denzel marathon. And when it started and they started playing the 99 Problems, I turned to my friend. I was like, oh, this is like the only Tony movie I don't like this movie. And by the end, I'm like, you know what? Actually, Travolta's very good. Yeah, he says motherfucker too many times. But he's playing...
He's fun and
But he's playing a cokehead Wall Street guy whose life gets taken away from him and is really angry. So, like, it completely tracks narratively that is who that guy is.
There's a center to it.
Yeah, but this guy is like... It's like there's scenes, like, before this movie started, Brian Van Holt and Travolta, like, sat in a room and, like, rehearsed this. Like, so when I'm sitting on the table, you're going to ask me this. And the first time you tell you the story, but I'm going to do this. So, like, she's like this. So I'm going to try to be, like, trying to see if she's good at it because we might hire her later. And then we're going to do this.
I'm back to engaging with the logic of the movie. Right. Is it Travolta's character is like, okay, we have done our live. We're going to rumble Tim Daly.
Sure.
So we're going to do it by having a bit of back and forth with Ribisi, who I don't like.
Yes.
And Brian Van Holt, who's on my team,
who I love.
Connie
He's my best
Nielsen
friend.
is irrelevant, but she has to be there, so we have to perform for her. And this will end with us busting Tim Daly, and then we'll get the fuck out of here.
Sure.
And then Connie Nielsen is so interesting. Pin in that. Like, to him.
Yes.
That he suddenly is like, let's also kind of throw some shit at her and see how she responds, because she could be getting the 8 ball if we like it, right? Is that the plot of this movie?
Yes, so. But Giovanni Ribisi, what did he witness in the woods, in the jungle, or whatever?
Well,
like, but think about it.
He was contracted to kill them by Tim Daly because Tim Daly knew that they were on his tail.
Yes, but
right?
so which one of his stories is true where he found like Jackson dead, or why did he think Jackson died? Like, I want to know what he thought happened. They kill him off so I don't have to deal with that logic, but it's like Ribisi, before he dies, what does he really think happened out in the jungle? Like, who did he think Jackson was really dead? Did he see someone kill him? Who did he see kill him? Because he never tells his true story.
No, he doesn't. It's all made up, right? Every story he tells is made
But
up.
he had to have died thinking that Sam Jackson was dead.
See, this whole conversation.
We're already in trouble.
This whole
Right.
episode to me feels like the Professorson episode of Community, where the joke is twists that start to stack up in a
He's
way
written
where.
too many twists, and he's like, I've lost control of the narrative. You guys are leading it in
But
a
Trump-
Right, and you're
Trying
like,
to
why did you do this in front of anyone if what you actually were doing was this?
But if Sam Jackson,
You're trying to trick people into thinking you were tricking them?
if it's a story where Sam Jackson is dead
Yeah.
and you just don't know that Travolta was part of it, you can kind of stack these things up enough. But if you need the ending to be that Sam Jackson's not dead, the level of complicated it needs to be for all of these things, it's just like...
I point you back to my incredible Letterboxd review, now up to 25 likes. Basic, more
Jesus
like
Christ.
complicated.
Wow, your computer is smoking right now from the amount of action that review is getting.
And by the time this podcast comes out, you'll have 26.
112 likes. I just refreshed.
Good job, buddy.
Thank
It's
you.
a good gag.
Thank you.
Now, Connie Nielsen, I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah.
She's terrible in this movie.
She is really boring.
Fuck.
Fuck, let me like it.
Let me see how many. Connie Nielsen is playing this role with a relatively thick Danish accent.
Yeah.
I can understand everything she's saying.
And at this point
But
in her career, she has been able to successfully drop the accent for entire films.
What's going on there?
They're trying to do the opening narration of To Kill a Mockingbird. That was the entire concept he had behind how she sounded, which is why the opening thing is what it is.
Uh-huh.
But in an ADR booth, she can kind of pull it off.
Right.
But it's one of those weird things about accents, which don't usually bother me. But it's like if you're performing and you're trying to focus on your accent and focus on give the best performance in the scene, it's like you're trying to juggle too many plates sometimes. And she's trying to like hold her weight against this guy who's going at 11 all the time.
That is definitely not
And
helping.
she's
Right.
trying to show that she's the kind of person who can see through his bullshit, and she's trying to sell the accent. And I think something's got to give at that point.
Well, she
It's a-
makes
it's a-
no
right.
sense in this
She makes
movie.
no
Like,
sense.
obviously, she's supposed to be kind of a Demi Moore in Few Good Men,
Yeah.
right? It's sort of like, yeah, I'm, here ostensibly to be along for the ride, but I start to figure things out.
Mhm.
Like, but it's bizarre casting. She just doesn't work.
Connie Nielsen has such a bizarre career. I want to go off on this for a second.
Demon Lover
please.
is awesome.
She
It's
is
a
a
good
person
movie.
where you're like, on paper, so is she incredible? And I think at times she's been very good. But you basically go, her first American film is The
Devil's
Devil's Advocate, right?
Which she's doing what she's told in that one.
totally.
Like she's serving weird, scary. You're a trash lady,
Right. And then
Yes.
you're like, one great scene in Rushmore.
Yeah.
Soldier, Permanent Midnight, Mission to Mars, Gladiator. Like suddenly you're like, within 3 years, she's in Gladiator.
But
And she's the female lead of Gladiator.
she's-
She's very good in it.
She's good in Gladiator, but I do think things like Mission to Mars, this to
Yes.
some extent, she's being handed the most boring role, and it's like you're a lady with short hair who's one of the boys.
You're kind of steely and mature.
yeah, right.
You're sort of the cheaper Rene Russo without the comedy.
I don't want to jump too far ahead, but The Ice Harvest is fucking awesome.
Love
She's
Ice
in the
Harvest.
Ice Harvest.
Love
She's in
Ice Harvest. I've
the
been
the
fucking-
Hunted.
I love The Hunted.
Yeah, the
You look at the
Friedkin
resume
movie.
and you
Yep.
disregard which films they are, and you're like, Brian De Palma, Ridley Scott,
right.
Asayas,
Wes Anderson
Wes Anderson, fucking Friedkin,
and number one himself, king of the DGA, Taylor
Hackford, Ramis.
But I think this actually goes
Ramis.
down to like the macro of the movie, which is that McTiernan needed a movie coming out of Rollerball, and he did an unbelievable job executing this movie. But it's a movie that was kind of broken, and he made it a little bit more broken by
Correct.
trying to solve problems he created. And this is not a movie where it's like, okay, well, we got the number one person that is exactly right for this character in every part. I think you sort of rely on the fact that like he's had a lot of movies that where they had to reshape the script and kind of get people you weren't expecting and make it all work. But this
Right.
is a movie that needs to be way more precise because of how much deception is in the thing.
This is my big take on McTiernan now as we're like finishing up this series. Not finishing up this episode. We have 4 hours left, but finishing up this series, right?
Yes.
Because he's one of the greatest what the fuck happened cases in the history of Hollywood. It becomes more dramatic and Shakespearean because of the crime and the downfall and everything. But you're also just like, how could a guy's instincts be that good and then get that wrong in a sort of general sense? I totally get this film strategically in his thought of his career as like and this is why I was trying to dig into the timelines versus Rollerball, David, is it makes sense if he's like, I have once again caught myself in a 13th Warrior situation. I need to sign up for another movie now that is more of a like stripped down adult thriller with movie stars to remind people that I know what I'm fucking doing and I'm not just like floundering in these $100 million plus disasters.
But I do think McTiernan also just has the energy of like, I can make this work.
That's like, the other problem.
He's like a
but
pretty,
he's made things work that should have been horrible.
So, but this is my take.
Yeah.
My take is if you're that guy, and Nomads, let's just put that to the side, right? I know you like it a lot more than we do. But the run of
Die Hard,
Predator, Die Hard, Hunt for Red October, where you're like, you read about the making of these movies and all the things that shouldn't have worked, and just his like next level fucking chess skills in real time.
Last minute cast changes, last minute location changes, whatever, all that shit. Yeah.
And the studio's being like, we don't know. And he just fucking is so correct that if you're a guy like that and like 3 times in a row you come out so triumphant, you start to go, well, anytime anyone doubts me, they're wrong. I know the way a John McTiernan movie works. I have to push through on my instincts.
But I also think he's like, we can't kill Samuel Jackson. That wouldn't make sense for that actor. And I'm James Vanderbilt. And I'm like, well, then maybe we shouldn't cast Samuel L. Jackson. And he's like, that's the hand we've been dealt. We're just going to fix it. But I can fix things.
But I also think we're talking about instincts here, right? Like,
but the way he puts it in the dossier is like, I loved the first half of the script.
Yeah.
Second half didn't make sense for what we had. So I tried to make the second half like the first half. When he says that, I'm like, I understand that on paper as a concept,
but I can fix
doesn't
things.
Really work for this movie.
I can fix things as, once again, I'm John McTiernan. When I'm backed into a corner with a gun to my head, I somehow deliver a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that 2 things are true at the same time, which is I think that McTiernan, for me, he's like my top 5 guys. I think he's the best American action director. I think he's made several movies that no one else in the world could have made work. Like Predator is a miracle. Like Die Hard is a miracle. Hunt for Red October is a miracle. And as to be one of the best guys to ever do it and to be one of the only guys who could ever make that work doesn't mean you're always the right guy for a movie. And it doesn't also mean that every movie is malleable. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that happens with movies is you can think that everything is malleable. It's like, I want to have a ham sandwich, but what if I turn it into roast beef? And like, if you've done that before, you think that can be done, but it can't always be done. This sounds like a completely stupid analogy, but it's like, Die Hard 3 should not work because like they took 45 pages of another script that is 98% that and then have a whole new movie on the end, and it mostly works until the last 2 minutes. I think that it's like basically a perfect movie until the last 90 seconds.
I agree. Now, if you've come out of that situation alive, you go, well, great, I know how to do stuff. Like, you feel doubt disappearing in his system in real time, where he's looking at things like this. He does not have doubt. But he's looking at something like this and he's like, yes, I understand what you're flagging to me as a thing I should maybe be worried about, would worry most people. But I'm John McTiernan and I make shit work. And like, you bring up the Travolta thing where you're like, maybe this isn't the right star. Or maybe if you hire Sam Jackson to play this guy, it's going to unbalance the movie. You could imagine his response being, that's what they would have said about me having fucking Sean Connery play the Russian in Hunt for Red October. Something on paper where you're like, why are you casting a bigger star in the Jack Ryan movie, who is notably a very different, like, has a very, very different cultural history than the culture this whole movie is based around.
Sure.
Like, all of that shit.
Yeah.
And he's like, I fucking will this shit into happening.
But Hunt for Red October to Medicine Man, to me, is the whole thing. It's
Totally.
like, how do you, like, he only made 2 movies that I, like, don't like. And it's Rollerball and Medicine Man. And Medicine Man, for me, is just fundamentally, like, I've seen a million worse movies, but I think it's just a fundamentally broken movie. I'm like, there's going to be people listening to this who are like, fuck you, that's my favorite movie. But Medicine Man, for me, just feels like, it feels just so miscalibrated on every possible level. And that doesn't mean he's not a genius. But the travesty for me is just like, I don't understand why, besides the legal stuff, which is so annoying and stupid, and Carl Rove's fault, obviously, is that, like, I was watching the commentary of this, so it's basically like on mute. And when I have basic playing, I'm like, this on mute is better executed than 99.9% of the movies from the last few years. So I don't understand why it's like, well, what if someone just gave him a movie of a script that worked and let him cook? Like, what is going on here? Like, why do we hire people who we're not even sure if it can do the job, who don't have a visual sense, who have no track record, because he made Rollerball? It's like, I just don't. It's like, it's frustrating to me that he doesn't have way more times at bat, because like everybody misses. Like,
I agree 100%, but all like the stuff that JJ dug up for Rollerball was so astounding, and that all of the worst creative decisions in that movie started with him. There were 1,000
It's true.
like production nightmares and things he could not have anticipated and things that got away from him. But you read about what he inherited in the script when he came on the project and what his like first 5 notes were. And you're like, those are the 5 quickest fundamental problems with this movie.
Right.
And he just has this attitude. And you dropped something right before we started recording, which I didn't know, which was that Keanu was supposed to do Rollerball. And his sort of characterization for the type of guy he wanted in the lead role of that movie certainly makes a lot more sense if it's played by Keanu than it is played by Chris Klein. I'm not saying it would 100% work, but it's already him creating weird challenges for himself and being like, I'm just trust me. I got this.
I think he falls victim to that I got this syndrome a little bit. I also think he gets destroyed by an industry that has that syndrome.
Yes.
By being like, now I would hire McTiernan today.
Yes.
Possibly, right? Like for some mid-budgety kind of like
if you had a metal
thriller.
detector at the door. Yeah.
But now Hollywood's like, no. We're going to get, this idiot. And it's like, well, that person's not even that good. And they're like, nah, but it works. We can control it. Like, it's like, it's the same syndrome as playing out.
And what happens now? You now have movies that get shot basically 2.5 times in total because the first director they hired doesn't know how to make the movie they've hired them to make, or they didn't give them the freedom to do it. And they're like, just keep throwing shit at it.
It's like the weirdest thing for me, which is just that I think that if you look at like the last 10 years and you look at like big, expensive American tent poles, like the only 2 movies that I think are better directed than Last Action Hero are like Fury Road and West Side Story. Like, I think in terms of the actual craft, like Last Action Hero, I don't even care if you don't like it.
Yeah.
The filmmaking in that movie, like the big gun sequence, like the way that he uses like zoom lenses while shooting action on the go, like panning from a car, zooming into another one, the way that he executes it is God level in a movie that everyone is so fixated on all this other shit. But it's like how
Fallout on that list, and otherwise I basically agree with you that those are
Fallout is like
do you see
way
Tarantino
up
saying West Side Story is like basically the best film of the 21st century?
I have 0 strikes against Steven Spielberg's craft in that movie.
Okay.
It's just, to me, it's like
I did see that, David. I hope you feel really
good. Feeling good.
and big and special.
I do feel real special.
like there's like a scene when like Travolta shows up to like scratch his balls, and like a camera goes around Connie Nielsen and it swoops around him and like past Tim Daly, and I'm sitting there being like, no one is doing this shit.
No one would
and
make
you're
that
going
effort.
around the guy from Wings to see like Travolta scratch his balls, and like it's so fucking beautifully executed.
Tim Daly's not just from Wings. He was on Private Practice.
He's from a lot of things.
Was that
but
show Eyes?
I was a big Wings guy, so my brain keeps just saying Wings
No,
guy.
I think he
You-
is forever
you-
the guy from Wings.
We
yes.
do our bits on this show about when like Danny Houston or Stellan Skarsgård get cast in something, and you go like, "Huh, I wonder who the bad guy is going to be."
Methinks, yes.
Tim
yes.
Daly in Basic has the opposite problem, where you're like, "This guy is so."
I don't know that this guy is
Straightforward.
serving criminal masterminds.
It's Gary
yes.
Sinise and Snake Eyes. It's
Yes.
like, why
Yeah,
is this
that
guy
too.
in this except
Exactly.
to reveal
Right, yeah.
that
That's
he
the
did
thing.
it?
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
not
yeah.
successfully playing criminal mastermind, but you're also like, they wouldn't spend energy on this character and hire this guy if he wasn't supposed to actually be secretly more than we think he's supposed to be.
It's so true. The same with
He's so bland and straightforward that he has to secretly be evil.
much less important, but when they go to the hospital and Harry Connick Jr. is there, I was just like, oh, he's bad.
This weird
Dude,
You
when
don't
they let him
cast that guy.
sing,
Same-
when they let him
he does
sing,
the same
Oh,
bit
yeah.
2 times of just being like, who's the most non-threatening guy that your mom likes? This guy's gonna be so fucking
He's gonna be a
twisted.
huge scumbag. Oh man, poor Harry Connick Jr. Already by 2003.
Okay,
it's
but
like, do you wanna be
again-
the 14th guy in Basic.
Scooby Dooby.
but dude, when he is the guy who's like, well, good thing I'm going with Dunbar to the thing or whatever. It's like, if he didn't say that, the movie doesn't work. Like, that's
yes.
Clockwork screenplay.
Yeah.
Everything.
But I think we're getting something here. Like, the McTiernan movies that feel airtight do not seem to have had airtight precision Swiss watch screenplays.
No,
they seem to have
usually unfinished,
organically
screenplays.
developed.
Yes.
Like, the thing this guy was incredible at was juggling 80 balls at the same time and suddenly somehow keeping his eye on them. But a lot of that is vaguely improvisational. Here's a guy who seems to flourish under a certain sense of chaos or pressure or like serving multiple masters and egos. You kind of get someone handing him a script like this and being like, it has to be exactly like this. And he's like, I'm going to wake up and do whatever the fuck I feel like I'm John McTiernan.
We're not going to do that. We'll do this.
And also, good luck reining Travolta in. He's doing whatever he wants to do.
I have to mention, I have the weird thing is, like, my director friends who are like people I know who like make movies and like we share our stuff.
Yeah.
We are all like huge McTiernan guys. It's weird. Like, my screenwriter friends all grew up on Stephen King, and my director friends are all like obsessed with McTiernan. And a director friend of mine, Jacob Gentry, had like gone down the rabbit hole on some of this stuff and started sending me things when I said I was doing this. And his theory is something I agree after watching every interview that he's ever done, is part of McTiernan not being as big is he doesn't self-mythologize in the way that everybody else does. Is like, all of his peers, whenever they're on the mic, they're like, I am the greatest thing that has ever lived. I've saved everything. You cannot make any movie without me. I am God. And he's sort of like, we were just in this thing and I kind of figured it out. And maybe I didn't.
And in retirement, in his sort of forced retirement, he keeps doing retrospective interviews and commentaries. He's not hiding, and his commentaries are really informative, but he's
not
just kind of
too
like,
self-aggrandizing.
this was the job I was hired to do, and here's how I did it, and here's my honest assessment of what I think I got right and what I got wrong.
Do you guys watch the new 13th Warrior documentary? Like, there's an hour-long one on YouTube that's from a few years ago, and at the end of it, he's like, look, there's a director's cut out there, but it may not be better, so I hope no one sees it.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
I think we
whoa.
did discuss that. Right. He's not David Ayer being like, man, no. There's an amazing Suicide Squad if you just let me release
His last action hero commentary is incredible for this reason. But like, Fury Road is impressive because despite the way that like Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy talk about it, they also acknowledge we were not understanding what he had in his head, but it was figured out so perfectly. There was such a clear game plan that he was not able to really communicate, but somehow he got the pieces out of everybody. McTiernan's present-day analog is Macquarie, because it is the same thing of like, I want you to throw me out of an airplane and force me to like sew the parachute in real time.
If he was a writer, I think that he could solve his own problem is really the issue.
And he's a bad writer.
I mean, I'm not one to say that, but
but it's not his inherent strength.
But they do have I think they're a similar comp in terms of what they do. That's the thing about McQuarrie. It's like he could be in movie jail and be like, all right, well, I'm just gonna rewrite the shit out of so many Tom Cruise movies that I'm indispensable.
Yeah,
like that's.
And even if he had a falling out with Cruise, he could do the same for anyone else. Like, Macquarie's never going to actually totally be in Siberia. And when he talks about his Siberia period, for 10 years, it was doing that. It was getting paid a lot of money to rewrite shit with no credit.
And basically, like you say, become invaluable is like, well, this guy knows how to fix a movie. Look. The plot of Basic. I know we don't really need to do this.
The problem I love when we do on these episodes when you guys go through everything in order, but the problem the middle section is kind of impossible to do.
Look, there's the live fire exercise that goes wrong. Brian Van Holt's in one room. He shot someone.
Mm-hmm.
Giovanni Ribisi's in the hospital. Brian Van Holt was like carrying him.
Yes.
Everyone else is gone. We don't know where they went. That includes Tay Diggs. Where'd he go? Dash Mihawk. Definitely not going to play like a weird racist, right? That Dash Mihawk played so many like lunkhead like idiots like in movies around this time. He's a good actor. I like Dash
good
Mihawk.
actor, but yes, he got stuck.
Got really buttonholed.
Yes.
Christian de la Fuente and Rosalind Sanchez. Like these guys are all gone, and Samuel Jackson is gone. What happened to them? John Travolta, who is not in the military anymore, is now a quote unquote DEA agent.
But this is like a
but is
term
friends with the guy from Wings.
He only wants to speak to ex-military.
Correct.
So just to say, the script takes place in Louisiana, and he was just a cop, but otherwise everything is the same so far.
Okay.
He is brought in by the guy from Wings, Tim Daly himself.
The most normal man.
Eyes on ABC. It was about 4 episodes before it got canceled. I watched every single one.
This is an episode of The Daily Show.
Yes, it is.
A once every 5 years version of Blank Check where we check in on one of the Daily siblings.
Incredible performance in that one episode of The Sopranos.
Tyne dropped out of doubt because she was having health problems, and apparently she's stable. It's a bummer she's not back on Broadway.
Oh, yeah, I know, because like what Tyne Daly definitely needs is more awards. She has too many awards.
Well, also, you love
Doubt. I love Doubt. I have no doubt about my love for Doubt. No, I don't need more Doubt.
Okay.
So basically the plot of most of this movie is Travolta goes to Brian Van Holt. Brian Van Holt's like, here's what happened.
Yeah.
Travolta's take is, great, round him up. Like, let's arrest this guy.
I'm done.
Then he goes to see Ribisi. Ribisi's like, that's not what happened. A completely different thing happened.
Yes.
Every story they are being told relies on total conjecture.
Yes.
Like suggestions of some sort of like group conspiracy. Like, let's get these guys by banding together. Like, there are no bodies. There's no evidence. Travolta's the worst cop in the world. He's always just like, oh, he said Brian Van Holt did it. You should arrest him.
Every account he's hearing is a different person saying, here's what I think I saw.
And it's literally, here's what I think I saw. And I think that guy didn't like that guy. Why? I don't know, because he's gay, because he's racist.
Right.
Like
but
for
as you said,
totally speculative stuff.
I don't know who's accounting to believe because they're all in conflict with each other. It's like every account is also based on wild swings.
Like one is Samuel Jackson got blown up by a grenade. Another is like Samuel Jackson like jumped on the roof and shot us with pistols going like, fuck you, bitch. Like they are complete. It's not like Rashomon where it's like, we know this guy got shot.
Right.
And let's figure this out. It's completely different things every time.
But it's like Usual Suspects if Chaz Palminteri was Kaiser Soze and he was interviewing 3 different people who keep contradicting each other, going from room to room.
And Usual Suspects was also like combined with Reservoir Dogs where the inciting, like the crime that's being dissected was mostly in one warehouse.
And also,
you know, like, because every time they cut back to a different account, you're like, it's all still in the same hut.
And also, if Chaz Palminteri at the end of every story that he was told was like, fine, arrest this guy, and there was a lady next to him who was like, don't you want to like ask more questions? Like, something about this doesn't make sense.
But what if no one said don't arrest that guy, and then he's like, well, fuck, I made all this up. What am I supposed to do now?
Like, I suppose that is. There are scenes that don't make sense.
Yes.
Such as Giovanni Ribisi in giving a A-tier terrible performance, just like all business, no character.
Putting the lotion in the basket.
Yes.
Yeah.
After they go to interrogate him for like the 14th time, where they're like, can you clear some stuff up for us to tell us a new story, for example?
I'll tell you this, my dad always said.
Throws up 8 buckets of blood and then draws an 8 on a piece of paper in blood and dies.
Draws an 8 on her hand.
On her hand, that's right.
His vomit blood.
Right.
After, I am not exaggerating here, doing full, like, drag me to hell vomiting.
Yes.
Like the most absurd Raimi-esque, there is no way that comes out of this person's body, let alone spontaneously.
Why would he know about Section 8?
I don't know.
Okay, great. You don't have an answer. I'm not even mad. I'm just genuinely wondering. Then there's another sequence where Travolta holds Brian Van Holt near an airplane propeller that is spinning.
Yeah.
And yells at him, but we can't hear what he's saying.
Uh-huh.
I assume at that point some instructions are being delivered, right? Like they're like going like, hey, wait, we almost got it.
You're totally selling this.
You know that bar in New Orleans? Let's go there. Like, but like we never revisit that.
No.
Okay, great. I'm just trying to make sure I didn't miss anything.
But this is why I bring up the professor for. I mean, I just finally finished my 30 Rock rewatch, right?
Yeah, so you're going to do Community?
Yeah, I did Community during the pandemic.
So
I don't know what the next one is, but there's the episodes where Baldwin is feuding with Chloe Grace Moretz are similar to Basic, where there's this who's zooming who. You think you're watching one person getting the upper hand, but it's actually the whole time that's what they wanted, whatever. And there's one where they think they've defeated Baldwin, and then he goes like, that's one way it could have played out. And then he reviews every scene and shows that actually he was on top of it. And then there's part of it is he slips 2 pieces of paper and makes Will Arnett send the wrong one. And Will Arnett says like, why did you make me send it? That's just unnecessary.
Right.
That's just mean.
So you're saying that's what Basic is doing over and over again?
Right. Where they're
Yes.
like, why would you have to do that in front of that person? Why would you even need to sell that part of it? That's unimportant. That's just mean to Connie Nielsen.
I need everyone to know that I just went down the most insane rabbit hole
Do it.
ever, and I'm going to do it in 20 seconds.
Please.
Is that I was trying to remember. So Dash Mihawk, when I first moved to LA in like 2005, I knew him because I went to a friends and family screening of this movie called Loveless in Los Angeles, which is like a very underseen movie with him and Brittany Daniel, where the guy came out and he introduced it by saying, you know, I've been an editor on like Blind Date and Fifth Wheel and all these things, and I really come to LA to direct a movie, so I decided, fuck it, I got to do it. So he made a movie about a guy who was like an editor on like Blind Date and like Fifth Wheel,
movies like
who
this.
decided to make a movie,
Especially
like
when they're
started
set
film.
in Los Angeles.
Well, I remember watching and just being like, but this is a movie about you, the fact
Right.
that you should have made a movie. And I was
Yeah.
like, what happened to that guy? And I found out that like he is now the executive producer on every like Mark Wahlberg reality show,
Oh, Jesus
like
Christ.
Wall
Yep,
Street
yep,
and like
he's the showrunner of
Wahlburgers and
Wahlburgers.
like
Perfect.
yeah. So I'm like,
he's an Emmy nominee.
I hadn't looked up the thought of this guy in 20 years, and I was like, the Dash Mihawk guy made good. He is now the Mark Wahlberg producer for all of his
Yeah, he
reality
worked on
shows.
Wall Street.
It's a
But-
pretty good encapsulation of the way the film industry tends to shake
But
out.
it's like, for me, Dash Mihawk was always like the surrogate of the Blind Date Fifth
Yes,
Wheel
yes,
guy
yeah.
in the fake Annie Hall movie.
He is. I mean, I love him in Romeo and Juliet. He's good in Thin Red Line and stuff. Like, but he's he's a type.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, he has like a very good 30 seconds.
I Am Legend, where he is CGI'd over, but is the main vampire.
He sure is. He's
Really?
very committed
He
in that
was
movie.
the physical.
Yes.
I mean, he was
He's
doing
the
it all
actor.
with
Yeah, yeah,
practical,
he's
and then
there.
he still is the guy. Yeah.
Anyway, all of this is irrelevant. John Travolta catches Tim Daly in a lie. Like, John Travolta goes to see Tim Daly. He's like, anyway, I wrapped it up. No, you didn't. And is like, yeah, so, I mean, it was probably about like this drug thing. And Tim Daly's like, psh, anyone doing a drug thing would have poisoned Giovanni Ribisi. Like, and you're like, well, great. Now we just
Okay.
fucking caught him. Like, like, great. He just admitted to it. And so Travolta is like, okay, they're doing this cutesy catty back and forth. And before Tim Daly shoots Travolta, Connie Nielsen shoots Tim Daly.
Yeah.
That's I guess the mental game he's been running. Is that like the intention of all this kayfabe?
Yes, but I
is
will
like,
tell you
I'm
what-
going to make her shoot him?
When I was watching that scene on mute,
But
when
he
I was
almost
listening to
seemed surprised
commentary,
that
it was
she
so
did that.
good.
Yeah. What is said in the commentary?
No, I'm saying
Oh.
like, no, I'm just saying the thing about the commentary made me realize, because he doesn't talk a lot in it,
Yeah.
is like I just wasn't hearing the movie, and I was like, on mute, this movie is fucking awesome.
Sure.
Like that scene, I'm like, this is like film noir, and it's like this thunder and lightning, and then when she's revealed behind the glass, it's a lot like when Reginald Johnson, like it's the same camera move as when he shoots the guy at the end of Die Hard, and I was like, this feels like the
It looks
best
good.
movie.
Yeah, you're right.
But what's happening in the movie is like Travolta just keeps kind of laughing a little bit too long while he's like telling him the thing, and then they both start laughing.
yes,
And
they
then
do
it turns
for like
and he's
a
like, what if
while.
I give you all the money? And he's like, oh, so you did do it.
Right.
And then
Well, even just the rain is such a McTiernan thing where you're like,
Yeah.
who else would choose to make it that much more complicated for themselves in the name of an overriding atmosphere to the movie?
I guess I'm supposed to believe that he's like, if Nielsen shoots Tim Daly because Tim Daly drew a gun, this is open and shut, and I can just be vapor in the wind, right? I can just like, and no one ever knew I was here,
But
right?
do you think that he thinks Nielsen's going to shoot Tim Daly?
No, because that would be insane to
Yes.
think that.
well,
But
I mean, like
maybe
we're
he
getting
does.
into like the Saltburn thing of like how
Well-
much of it was intentional or how
Right.
much wasn't, or were you improvising as you went along?
Yes.
It's unfortunate now. I'm never going to see a movie again as long as I live that doesn't have like a series of like flashbacks to what actually happened and
In
not
case you
think
didn't
of
get it.
like the money in the wallet from Saltburn. It's like even now when I'm watching this, and this is a movie, I always love this. I don't care if it's Sixth Sense,
Yeah.
like
Well, that's the
like-
best version of
yeah,
it you're
it's
describing.
like I
Yeah.
love being like, oh, that actually happened. Oh my god, I love editing. This is such a cool
This
shot.
is my whole fucking problem with Saltburn that I keep talking around is just like that.
Did you
movie-
know that he actually put a hole in the tire, and that's why he did it?
that it shows you this scenes as if
So
you're going to be
annoying.
fucking shocked,
Wait,
and you're
what?
like,
Barry Keoghan was not on the level in this movie?
and I'm not patting myself on the back going, I was ahead of the twist. I'm going, I didn't think that was supposed to be a twist.
Right,
If that was not telegraphed, then what the fuck have I been watching?
What if Saltburn had the incredible twist of like, nah, this is actually a nice guy, and these were all a bunch of weird accidents.
My mind.
Exactly.
So in the first murder,
The ending is structured as if the reveal is every time Barry Keoghan did something creepy, he then immediately left a room and a random person broke in and killed somebody.
I had like an in real time nervous breakdown.
It's the OJ thing. Over.
Yes. Saltburn should be if I did it.
He's like, when the first murder happened in Saltburn and they didn't show him do it, I turned to my girlfriend and said, why didn't they show him kill him? Like a beat passes and I go, oh my God, do they think it's a twist? And then a beat passes and I'm like, oh no.
I feel like a moron. I actually was sitting there going, I'm going to give Emerald Fennell a little credit for not feeling the need to show me. I guess that is a weird flex of directorial restraint on her part.
She felt the need.
Every time they didn't show me a crime, I was like, okay, she's holding back.
So
I was astonished by the twist of that movie, thinking it's a twist movie. That was the greatest twist I've seen.
But the point I brought it up is not just to unnecessarily say something
Saltburn
bad
for everyone fucking 9 months after it comes out.
I know, and I'm just a gigantic hater. It's just that there's that thing where it's like, was everything planned or was it half planned?
Yes.
And it's like the more you show, the more questions I have, which is like, okay, so then why did they do that? What did they expect to happen at this point? Once you start saying this meant something, this meant something, this meant something, then I'm like, did it all? Or were they improvising some of it?
Yes, because in the best versions of these types of movies, at the end when Travolta fucking lays out what was really going on the whole time, he's like, now, what I was planning to do was to do this, and then you shot him, which freaked me out, but then I realized this gives me an opportunity.
No.
The way in which Connie Nielsen shoots him also, the fact that she is on the other side of a closed door.
Through a window, yeah.
Through a window,
crazy.
and he's like, why do you shoot him? And she's like, I saw him like doing shit with his hands.
But Thomas Crown has the magic version of this when they don't see how he took that other painting.
Yeah. Right.
And you never need to know.
No, you don't need to know.
The instinct
the
to
wise
know
choice,
what you need to see and when you don't.
It's what he, at his best, is incredible at.
But by trying to set up
McTiernan.
the new ending with Sam Jackson not being dead, you kind of end up in a very murky situation of you need to set up this or let him know at least this was this, and I don't really even know what the right answer is. There's no fix that I know of.
Until the last 10 minutes, I'm watching it going, the ultimate twist of this has to be that Connie Nielsen is, if not in on it, is running her own thing, that Connie Nielsen is not who she says she is, and that she's actually the one who's quietly been manipulating circumstances. Because to do all of this basically just for her seems insane.
Okay, so I want to address what Ben just texted Griffin and I in 1 second. But first, yes, the final twist of this film is they are all in Section 8. Sam Jackson is alive. Taye Diggs is here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everyone's back. They are an elite bunch of undercover.
Ribisi.
He's dead.
Hell of that.
Ribisi and Mihawk didn't make it.
It would have been incredible if Ribisi was there at the last scene.
Showed up covered in his
He's just
fake
got,
blood
he's got like
vomit.
the Andrew WK, like the blood all down. No.
Full the game
But
ending.
that's Val Kilmer coming
And
back
he's like,
Kiss Kiss
hey
Bang
guys,
Bang.
how you, like he has a new voice.
James Redhorn should be there at the end wearing a little party hat.
He should
Too
be
many
there with the
drinks
party
in.
hat.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're an elite anti-drug unit within the military.
Yeah, they're actually the coolest, best guys.
Travolta being like a somewhat corrupt DEA agent is the total cover story for the fact that he's in fact like Colonel of Awesomeness. They all hit the gym every day, and does Connie Nielsen want a job? They also kind of need her because they are pretty much all pretend dead at this point. So they're going to need like a living person.
They're like
Do
the
they
A+
fuck?
team.
Do
Is
who
that-
fuck?
John Travolta and Connie.
Never.
And, 5 minutes after the movie's
The
over,
movie
yes.
thinks yes. I think no.
No.
Okay.
No, absolutely
Because it's not
Yeah.
clear.
Here's what I think happens the moment after the movie ends.
Yeah.
Okay? If the camera were to stay rolling for another 5 seconds, I think the final line of the movie would be Connie Nielsen saying, wait, you're gay, right?
And
That's
there's
been my
one
read
more
on this whole
twist.
dynamic.
Now,
Just to be super clear.
Now we never addressed my letterbox review of this movie was.
I'm talking about the characters in the film.
Yep. It was. We should also address. There's this
A
insane
lot of
part.
hand signals happening here, in like full arm traffic signals telling me to stop talking. David, what were you gonna say?
I forgot about the part where Brian Van Holt like says like he doesn't like baseball or whatever. Like there's a lot of like clever, fun, back and forth that is then kind of sent into the dimension of insanity by Travolta, just like making every line reading bizarre. My Letterboxd review was the early 2000s joy of Travolta being Caddy for 105 minutes, which is how I feel about that performance.
Yes, and I think Caddy is the wrong choice for this character.
But it's the choice he has made.
Yeah,
nonetheless.
My Letterboxd review, which no one cares about, was me complaining about the end credits song, which drives me insane because it should have just been Bolero. Like they start playing. Is it Bolero? Is that what the piece of music is that from the opening scene?
Yes.
They should just kept playing that. That's the vibe he's aiming
McTiernan.
for.
He loves a classical music.
Sure.
And instead, they're like, "Whoa, bad cover, blah blah blah."
Well, bad cover.
Ben sent us his review.
Okay, let me just look at Ben's review here.
So you haven't seen it?
Working on my ranked list here. No, I'm just organizing my ranked list. Okay, I love the formality of Ben Hosley. My 2-star review of Basic on Letterboxd. Link below.
Click the link. There you go.
Ben, do you want to read it out?
I'd like for you to read it, please.
You're finally capturing the magic of listening to this podcast at home. I'm like, what's happening?
I know, right? You're getting to see it in real time. What is this long ass episode of Jag?
There you go. Finest film critic.
And then immediately comment underneath our finest film critic.
If Jag looked like a McTiernan movie, I would watch all 10,000 episodes on repeat.
Yeah. I mean, this is the problem with McTiernan is you watch something like this, which I clearly like a lot less than you guys, and I'm still like, we didn't know how good we had it.
But this is like a bad episode of Columbo directed by God. Like
that is a great take. But it's God after he's become God. Like it's not watching a Spielberg Columbo where you're like, oh shit, this guy's got the magic.
It's veteran God.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Did you like Basic, Ben? Well, apparently you thought it was like a long episode of Jag.
Yeah.
His favorite thing in the world. He's always complaining that Jag episodes are too short.
No, I didn't hate it, but I just struggled to get through it a little bit.
That's sort of a sign of not liking it.
I mean, it's no Joe Dirt.
It's
This
no
is true.
Joe Dirt.
It's
more
better-
of a Joe Dirt 2.
American Loser.
Let's play.
This was a Crackle original.
It was.
Let's play the box office game before we do our McTiernan rankings, Griffin.
No, I just want to say, like, when we had Julie Klausner on for Star 80, a movie I like a lot more than she does, but a very difficult, thorny movie, right? And her take as someone who loves Bob Fosse is just like, don't you just find it really disappointing that this is the last thing we ever got from this guy? Like, isn't this such a horrible note to end on?
Sure.
And I do not think that Basic is a noxious film in any way. And we've talked about like everything that happens after this movie, but it's just such a bummer to be like, this is his last film.
Oh, see, I disagree.
And I do think I judge it harsher for that reason.
I'm the opposite. I think I've seen a lot of Last movies, and this one is like perfectly fine. It doesn't really work. It's like there's way worse ones from like people who like I love.
Imagine if Rollerball was the last one.
Yes.
We're doing okay.
I agree. I'm not saying it's one of the worst last films ever.
Right.
If he made this film and then 6 months later had a heart attack, would be like, what a tragic story. And it sucks that you're like 21 years later, he's still alive and not making movies, and his last thing is Basic. That part of it blows.
It's insane that his last movie is 2003. That's my real thing.
Right.
Good or bad, it's insane that this is his last movie.
Yes, that is the part that depresses me.
The bummer is Carpenter's.
Yeah, Carpenter's a
one
much
of the
worse
worst
film
ones,
to end on.
right.
But if McTiernan was on record saying, I'm high watching Lakers games and
That's
playing
the
video
difference.
games, I'd be like, I don't need more, man.
Carpenter
true.
at least has the line of, I can't be bothered, I don't care enough anymore. And I'm like, you know what? Actually, if you're happy, that's more important to me. Versus McTiernan, is not happy.
If McTiernan was stoned watching Lakers games and playing Dead Space, I'd be like, you know what? I can just
I'd be
keep
thrilled.
watching Last
I'm glad
Action
this guy
Hero.
figured it out.
March 28th, 2003.
Okay.
There are 3 new films in the top 5.
Wow.
They are basically all making the same amount of money. This is a box office game where the movies are 13, 12, 12, 11 are the numbers.
Okay.
So it's just kind of like a classic beginning of the year box office of like a bunch of underperformers at the same time.
Okay.
Right? So the Basic is opening at number 4, which is not great,
I would say not great.
to $11 million. It's
Okay.
going to leg that all the way out to 26,
Ooh.
which is not good.
Yeah.
And make 42 worldwide on a 50 budget.
Okay.
BenDavid is cracking a White Claw. Number 1 of the box office is new this week, Griffin. It
Okay.
is a comedy
Okay.
starring a major comedy star.
One of my guys? Not really.
Not sure. He was a huge deal. He
2003.
wrote, directed, and stars.
Oh, it's Head of State.
Head of State.
Yeah.
I think the best Chris Rock directed movie.
Yes.
That's not a great.
It's not. But I
Bernie Mac
think
is
it
so good.
Bernie Mac is really
Bernie
great.
Mac's awesome in it.
There are a couple things that are great. Nate Dogg is great in it.
Yes.
Here's a story about a man.
I'm Sharon Stone's
Wanted
cousin.
to be head of state. Now
saying
he's the head of state. I used to do this bit with my friends all the time. Nate Dogg narrates that film as an omniscient rapping narrator, a rapping ode to the watcher, if you will. And every time they cut to him, it's a little like they're trying to do Jonathan Richman in Something About Mary.
Right.
But it's just him going, here's a story about a man.
Just again.
Then he moved to Washington, trying to be the head of state. He'll be the head of state.
when his rival keeps saying, and I'm Sharon Stone's cousin, that sums up so many big directors in Hollywood.
This is true.
That every time I think of that line whenever I find out like someone was like Katie Couric's nephew or something, when I find out they're like got a movie.
I was a Dash Mihawk's body man.
Number 2 at the box office. It's a comedy. It's a huge hit. It's in its 4th weekend. It's finally been dethroned. It's
Bring down the house.
The house has been brought down.
The house has been brought down.
It's made $100 million.
The government has intervened. We must reconstruct the house.
Bring down the house.
Bring down the house.
Steve and Queen.
A movie. Steve McQueen?
Steve and Queen. Steve, Martin, and Queen. Latifah.
Oh, Steve and Queen.
Steve and Queen.
Steve and Queen. I'd say Martin and Latifah is what I would say.
Yeah, but I thought it'd be funny if I said Steve and Queen.
Sure.
Because no one has ever said that before.
David, you're right. It's funny. And I give you 10 comedy points.
Thanks. Number 3 at the box office is new this week.
Mm-hmm.
It's a disaster film.
Okay.
It's opening to number 3, so it's not doing
good.
great.
It's not the core, is it?
It sure is.
Which the fuck's all night?
Not bad, right?
All
love
day
it.
and all night.
I love it.
One of those movies that came out, people were like, no. And then just like 10 years later, people started being like, well, we all agree the core is good. And I was just like, can you invite me to some of these meetings?
Yeah.
I'll watch it now, but like, you just got to keep me updated.
I talked about this in a past episode, but I watched The Core with someone I was dating who was like, you've never seen The Core? And I was like, what's this energy of you've never seen The Core? As if The Core is canon. You're not even a film person.
I'm not mad that you like The Core, but you just have to send me some memos if
Correct.
we're all now agreeing The Core is
So
good.
then she's like, we're staying home, we're watching The Core tonight. We put on The Core in 30 minutes, and I'm like, who the fuck directed this?
John Emile, baby.
Truly, I was like, and he won Best Picture within 2 years of this movie?
I think you can go back and watch
Core is
any
so good.
Delroy Lindo. Is it Delroy Lindo and Tucci are both in that?
Yeah.
Tucci,
Yes.
Delroy
Any
Lindo,
movie-
Hilary Swank.
Any
DJ
movie that
Qualls,
Delroy
Eckert.
is in from that
Eckert,
era
yeah.
is good.
Yeah, basically.
Richard
yeah.
Jenkins, Bruce Greenwood. I mean,
Come
these are
on.
names. Alfred Woodard. Number 4 is Basic.
Yep.
Number 5 is the Best Picture winner of the
2002
prior
is
year.
Chicago.
It's Chicago.
Still just fucking tap dancing all over the box
14 weeks
office.
in, it's made $144 million.
So it still has like 30 left in the tank.
It's doing great.
That's doing
Number 6 is Dreamcatcher. Good normal movie.
good and normal film.
I like that movie. Number 7 is Agent Cody Banks.
Good and normal. The first one.
The first one.
Okay.
Number 8 is Piglet's big movie. I will say I don't remember that one in between Winnie and Tigger. Piglet's big movie.
No. Tigger was the first of the theatrical releases for the Disney Toon movies. Then it's Piglet's big movie, and then it's Pooh's Heffalump movie.
Right. Well, Piglet's big movie.
Yeah.
Number 9,
It's
The
a funny
Hunted.
poster. It was his little tush.
This little
The
corkscrew
poster
tail.
was his little corkscrew.
Just
tail.
remembered all of that off the top of your head.
Yeah.
You never
bang.
cease to fucking amaze me. It's crazy.
Hunted.
It's fucking crazy.
I don't even
It
know what
is.
to
Look,
say
it's
about
not
it.
on my screen. I wasn't looking at
No,
anything.
I know. And we just, every once in a while, because I've witnessed you do this hundreds and hundreds of times, but goddamn, that is insane.
We've had
Griff.
these conversations a lot, BenDavid, and you and I both like to pull things out. Sometimes our listeners, when they get into the room and they watch me do it in real time and see it is not aided by any visuals.
I just realized that our guest has a name that makes it sound like you're addressing Ben and I at the same
I
time.
can't believe it took us this long in the episode to figure that out.
My goodness.
Yeah, I earlier was going to make a joke about it, but it felt narcissistic.
Okay.
So
It's quite all right.
What if I establish a new bit here that anytime I want to address Ben and David at the same time on the podcast, I say Grabinski?
Absolutely. Please do
all right,
that.
when I come back for Dragonfly and Shady Axe 1, we'll get that.
You'll come back before
you'll be
then
back in
because
11
we're never
years.
fucking doing that. Number 10 at the box office is View from the Top,
David
directed by friend of a friend of the show.
Yes.
Well, father of a friend of the show.
Yes.
Bruce Barretto, is that his name?
Ex-husband of a previous guest of the show.
No, it's not Bruce. What's his fuck, I gotta look it up. What's I've never seen View from the Top. Obviously, I know
Bruno Barreto?
Bruno Barreto. There you go. I know it was not a hit.
No.
Does it have a cult following at this point?
I think a little
I feel
bit,
like
because
stylish Gwyneth
everything
Paltrow
does.
stewardess movies should have a cult following.
Yeah.
Like Mike
it's
Myers is in it?
Yes. He has the one joke in the trailer of, I keep putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable that I will never forget. That I think about once a day. It lives there in my brain, Ben, right next to Piglet's tush on the teaser one sheet.
It's funny. That's a time of my life where I can do the box office game, and I remember 90% of the movies, and like I saw everything, as like we were talking about before the pod, like I saw every Brian Van Holt movie. But somehow Griffin, who was younger than me, is like, well, I remember exactly what trailer and like what the final tag of it was and what the order of these Disney releases were. And I'm like, how old were you
I was
then?
14, but I was in full like John Nash mode, staring at a wall, like just having numbers fly off of me.
What will Travolta do? I mean, Travolta can do whatever he wants. McTiernan, will we ever get him back? Obviously, there have been various, he's linked to this movie, but that's
Sure.
really more before the jail stuff.
And look, we did a Patreon episode that's incredibly good and normal. It's kind of the dream catcher of Patreon episodes.
In which we get into all of that. But obviously, post-prison, there's this supposedly this movie called Red Squad.
Yeah.
That I think did end up getting made, like sort of a red boxy movie. That never, came to fruition for him.
I mean, there's a Wikipedia page of 20 unmade John McTiernan projects, and half of them are post 2003. Yes. There were things he had on the runway he was trying to get off the ground, hoping he would not end up in prison. There are many things he's tried to set up post-prison. To a certain degree, it's almost surprising that you don't realize, oh shit, that like weird Kellen Lutz Millennium Films Redbox thriller was quietly directed by John McTiernan.
No, he never. Well, here's the quote from McTiernan to explain exactly this. I'm still being offered action movies. Last week, I received the story of an armed commando. There are still people ready to finance things by waving a $2 million payday in my face. I would really need it, but I always refuse. It's always the same story. 3 guys arm themselves to the teeth and kill a slew of people in Colombia to save some poor guy's daughter. My country has never gotten over these pathological obsessions. Europe is much more civilized. I've continued to write, and I believe I have strength and years left. I'm just as angry now as when I was 19. That was a quote from like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm ready, but I don't want to do some bullshit movie. Like,
So like 5 years ago, I saw him.
I respect that.
Right.
I will say.
Yeah.
I saw him like 5 years ago. There's this thing that this guy that I used to do called they did the 6-shooter series at AFI where 6 AFI filmmakers would come and introduce a movie that made them want to make movies, and you didn't know what you were going to see. And it was like a marathon of 6. And McTiernan was there for the last one. And he came out and introduced McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
Awesome.
And he was so passionate about it. And it made me like understand, after being obsessed with his movies my whole life, suddenly his style, which is I do think there's a weird analog and like comparison between like that era of Altman and what he's doing and how he was using like zooms and anamorphic zooms and all that
guy
stuff.
Who really like let movies develop organically in the process of making the movie, building things around the actors he had, the conditions, and feelings, moods. Yeah.
And it just made me wish, like, at the least, he wasn't, like, out there just sort of being, like, a fun scholar, like, talking about things, introducing screenings. Yeah. But the sad thing about the timeline to me is, I didn't even realize until recently, is that when he went to prison was so much later than Basic. And there was this long time where they weren't sure if he was going to, and he couldn't get movies made because people didn't know if he was going to go.
Can we just sort of talk about this?
So he was like in jail before he was in jail.
Yeah. I mean, this is on this Wikipedia page. There are a lot of these things, and a lot of them were things that like he optioned with his own money.
Right.
A big part of his complete fallout is like the Pelicano thing really starts building in 2006. 3 full years after this movie. He's not in a great place career-wise, but he's trying to get stuff made. He's not actually sentenced to prison until 2013.
Yep.
He only serves 14
about
months?
Yeah, a little over a year. But I mean, you say that he's not actually sentenced to prison, but the case...
Yes.
Right.
Oh, it's continuous that
and
whole
he's in
period
court
of time.
and
And then he's also going through a divorce that exact same period of time. He experiences complete bankruptcy, like dramatic bankruptcy, a lot of which is obviously tied to his money being tied up in courts for 6 years,
Also,
hiring lawyers.
He's had 3 divorces. I
Yes.
think there's a lot of money going out.
Yeah, but like everything is sort of collapsing in real time.
Right.
And a lot of the projects that he had sort of put his own money into trying to develop on his own in the post-basic pre-prison era end up getting pulled away as part of liquidation. Those rights all fall away from him. And just full episode on this, but like the cornerstone of the Pelicano thing is that he is called by the FBI. They say, we're building a case against Anthony Pelicano. Did you ever employ his services? He says, no, I did not. Thank you for calling. Hangs up. And finds out they have a tape of him saying, hey, Anthony Pelicano, I, John McTiernan, would like to hire you to tap the phones of Charles Roven, the producer of Rollerball.
And Pelicano's like, sure, I'm going to do it illegal, though.
Yeah,
real
he's like,
illegal
that's
style.
what I...
Right, yeah.
And all the other Pelicano tapes are just sort of like, and Anthony, do whatever you feel like would be the right way to go about doing this thing that I'm speaking about very vaguely.
Yes.
They had him dead to rights. He circles back. He says to them, I'm sorry, I lied. I would like to cooperate on this case. And then hires a lawyer who says, you never should have said that.
Right.
You should now plead innocent.
Yes. Withdraw your guilty plea. Always great legal advice.
And
yes.
from that moment, he's fucked. And now he spends 6 years trying to double down on his innocence with the advice of a lawyer who seemingly was John Travolta in Basic. I mean, I bring all this up here because, like, the boondoggle of how he ends up in prison feels like it follows Basic-esque logic of why would you make those decisions in that order?
He unquestionably got screwed in a way where, like, I didn't even know until I originally read this story that if someone just calls you and asks you something, like, you have to tell the truth.
Yes.
Like, I didn't even know until I found out about the story like a decade ago. I'm like, oh, so if someone just like, hey, did you commit a crime? And I say no, and they find out I did, then I'm in trouble. Like, what does a phone call mean? What are you talking about?
You can be in trouble for lying to the FBI.
Yes.
Yeah, but how do you even know if it's the FBI? Like, people, like, it could be a prank call.
true.
Like, it could have been Bart
I think
Simpson.
They said they were the FBI.
Yeah, but people
But
say
it could
that.
be
What
Bart
does that
Simpson.
mean?
BenDavid makes a good point. It could be Bart Simpson.
No, but like he claims he was just like, I don't even know who this guy was. I'm just like, never mind, and I hang up the phone.
Yes, I don't think they were not going to actually put him in jail for that. It's that he then adopted a belligerent legal strategy that maybe was the wrong one, and they were like,
But-
"Okay,
but
well, you're guilty of stuff." So
I
we'll
get it because they were
prosecute you.
going after all these gigantic people and
Yes.
couldn't get shit. And then
No
he
one else went
became
down.
like, at least we can take down this guy.
Right.
And I get why you'd be pissed about it. I'm not here to support exactly how he handled it, but I just think like I can understand losing your mind and being incredibly frustrated about all that.
And especially feeling like the whole thing is crumbling. Like, it's not just that. It's like, my wife is leaving me. I'm coming off of multiple flops in a row. My reputation's been dinged. I'm losing my home. Like, all this shit.
All right.
But he
Listen
has
to
a
our
bulletproof
Pelicano episode.
legacy that someone should do a podcast about, talking about all of his movies in a row with one for each of them, because he's made like, I think only 2 really bad ones. One that's just okay. And then a lot that are like ranging from good to perfect.
Well, hold on a second. BenDavid, take out
Yes.
your handgun. I'm going to creak this door open. Creak. Oh, here we all are drinking Coronas on Bourbon Street. It turns out all along that's what's been happening. We've
Well, I
been
thought you
doing
guys only
that
did 3,
series.
so I didn't know
Yeah.
that there was going to be any more of it. I just walked into a room and there was microphones and Ben, and I thought we were talking about Joe Dirt 3.
Well, if only.
It could happen.
Could happen.
Do you have a pitch on that?
Don't make 2.
They made 2. Beautiful loser.
We can retcon 2 out of existence.
Okay.
Well,
Give
wait.
me-
Did we talk about the reveal of your like insight into Rollerball? Did you get to?
The Keanu thing?
Yeah, we did.
talked
Yeah,
about
yeah.
Sorry.
But that to me, again, we didn't. The one thing I just want to say is like, it's one of those unbelievable, like when something's like about to go and you're like, we got to get somebody. The fact that people in a room were like, okay, well, Keanu's not going to do it. Who can we get that's like Keanu? No one is like Keanu.
That's
And Chris Klein is not like Keanu. Like, I get how someone who
But
doesn't.
he has black hair, you see.
And they're like, oh, like, sir, is he dumb energy?
But it-
like, you can see the worst studio thinking that gets to Chris
If you're
Klein.
someone who doesn't understand why Keanu is great,
Yeah.
maybe. But the idea that Alexander Payne was just in a high school one day and is like, that guy feels like this character. Let's put him in front of a camera. And then years later, the director of Die Hard is like shooting him like going down San Francisco on a luge or whatever. That
Yes.
through line is unreal.
Yeah, but you're missing a huge middle step. He was great in American Pie.
I think he's great in all those. I think he's very good in comedies. I don't
I
think he's
agree.
an action star. And if you ever go on YouTube, look up all of his lines in quick succession
Oh,
from Street
we
Fighter.
We talked about
it.
that
Oh, boy.
episode, believe
Yeah,
me.
we talked about it.
BenDavid, you made a top 11. I was going to say top 10. You ranked McTiernan's films.
Yes,
correct?
You've been rewatching all of them.
I rewatched
Right.
all of them, as like my 4 followers on Letterboxd would know.
Hey, I'm one of them.
So how do we want to do this? Who's going to go first?
I'll go first.
Oh, here he comes.
I mean, it's just a weird case of just like, I feel like we're all going to have the same bottle in the same top, and it's a question of what the order is.
I agree with you, although I think we don't.
But the
know.
order
I'd say
seemed
there's an
very
objective
wild.
reality of the top 2, and if you guys get it wrong, I'm going to storm out.
Interesting. Okay, I'd say Rollerball is his worst movie.
Okay, you're going bottom to top. Sure.
I put that at 11. I put Nomads at 10. I put 13th Warrior at 9. I'm like, those are the 3 that
Interesting. I have Medicine Man at 9.
I have Basic at 8. I have Medicine Man at 7. So I'm just like, 13th Warrior, Nomads, Rollerball, those are a tier. Medicine Man, Basic, that's like a mini tier.
Okay.
Then I'm like, Last Action Hero is firmly in the middle of like this perfect embodiment
your
of the
number
Clash.
6.
That's my 6, right?
Okay.
And then there's just a rock solid top 5
But give me
that is all
order.
4 to 5-star
Give
movies.
me the order.
My order, and this is shooting off the hip. Number 5, Die Hard with a Vengeance. Number 4, Thomas Crown Affair. Number 3, Hunt for Red October. Number 2, Predator. Number 1, Die Hard.
Should I go next?
Yes.
Has
have to build
objective
up
reality
suspense.
been serviced?
I'm gonna get into it, but I have thoughts.
I have Rollerball at 11,
Mhm.
Nomads at 10. I'm sorry. Medicine Man at 9, 13th Warrior at 8, Basic at 7.
Yeah, see, I just find Medicine Man more watchable,
Not I.
even if it's not more functional.
I have Last Action Hero at 6.
Mhm.
I
And
have
there's-
Thomas Crown at 5 to my own surprise. I loved Die Hard with a Vengeance so much on rewatch.
Yes.
That I have that at 4. I have Predator at 3 and Red October at 2. Die Hard is my number 1. But I agree with you. It re-tiers generally.
Right. Like the basement of that tier might honestly be 4.5 stars.
Yeah, I agree.
I just think the Die Hard, Hunt for Red October has to be the top 2, just in terms of, I think that those are the best executed like studio pieces of entertainment a human being could ever make.
I agree with you. I just love Predator so
I will
fucking
Predator
never-
is a very
much.
Griff movie.
Well,
it
It's a
has
very
a
Griff
big
movie.
lizard man in it.
And it's a parody of masculinity, and it's like a sandbox movie
But
with
this
everything
is-
mushed together.
This is
I agree with you
degrees
that
anyway. We love these films.
Look,
I think it's the difference between if I'm like, what is John McTiernan's finest work versus what is my favorite John McTiernan movie?
I mean, he's made 6 movies to me that are all 5 stars, but a couple of them are like 500 stars. So like, I'm going to start from
ahead.
the top because I'm
yes,
crazy.
okay. Yeah,
No,
no,
do
do
it.
that.
Number 1's Die Hard,
Yeah,
obviously.
undeniable.
It's,
Yeah.
one of the best movies ever made. Hunt for Red October, I think, is honestly not that far away from Die Hard. It's just fucking unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
And like, I had done a list before I did my rewatch, and it was number 3. And when I watched it, I'm like, this is undeniable.
That's
like, I think
exactly
if you
how
know
I
anything
felt.
about it, just while I was watching, I'm like, I'd be wrong to do anything. But then now I go insane because I'm voting just on favorite,
Sure.
which is number 3 is Last Action Hero.
I saw this coming.
Yeah.
Now, Last Action Hero, maybe
I respect
30%
this.
of
I
it.
respect this.
There's
Yeah.
there's some jokes in it that have never made me laugh and never will, and it's 20 minutes too long. But the highs of it to me are like so fucking high.
I mean, this is my fucking Nancy Meyers intern take, where I'm like, there's 30% of the intern I hate, and 70% of it I think is the best shit ever.
I compare it to The Intern all the time.
They're very similar movies.
But like the intro of Arnold walking over the cop cars with like zooming and like tracking with it, he steps down, the guitar kicks in,
Yeah.
cigar, fucking unbelievable. Predator's next, perfect movie.
Mhm.
And the shocking thing for me was that I put Thomas Crown above Die Hard 3 on this, and Die Hard 3 has always been one of my favorite movies, and it still is. But the finale of Thomas Crown on this viewing, I'm just like, this is a God-making thing.
Yeah, I think that if you
I
have
agree.
to figure
agree.
out, those two movies are very close in a lot of ways in terms of ranking, right? And you're like, Thomas Crown nails the ending so hard, and that is exactly where Die Hard with a Vengeance falls apart a little bit. So if
He
you have to
becomes-
give one of them the hair,
He becomes MacGruber in the last 2 minutes.
This
Like
is
the whole movie,
good
he's a
call.
badass, and suddenly a helicopter shows up, and he's like, "I'm here. I'm John McClane. I'm blowing our cover."
Yeah.
And, like they come out. He gives them time to get another helicopter, and then he gets out, and then he like shoots a wire, but then it doesn't hit the thing. But then they run into the thing,
and
and
he
then
says
they
the
ADR
thing. He
line.
says the thing.
Yeah, it's just like, in any other movie, I'd be like fist pumping at that
Yeah.
moment. But that movie is just so unbelievable. And then the final few moments, you're like, well, we got to end it. And we can't do that thing with the rocket launchers. So,
I mean, I said it in our episode, but the first hour of that movie is 6 out of 5 stars. The first hour is unbelievable. And then it drops down to 5.
I say that the first 47 movies of that are masterpiece. The next hour is just a classic, and the last 3 minutes don't work.
I think is a good assessment.
All right,
sure.
So next one is 13th Warrior, which I was really shocked by how much I enjoyed it on this watch. I hadn't seen it since theaters. Then Basic, and then Nomads, and then my bottom 2 are Medicine Man and Rollerball. Medicine Man to me was just like it was like seeing a movie like out of focus. It just wasn't. And I went down a crazy rabbit hole on it, and it was all because like he had a meeting with Connery and realized that Connery would not be the lead. Like he had to be the lead, and he wouldn't let like have there be a strong woman. And he was like, it needed to be the dynamic of like Thomas Crown Affair, but like she's just I love her and everything else. But in that movie,
this was our take on that episode. It is one of the most catastrophic miscastings in the history of Hollywood in a way that actually feels like cruel to her.
Yeah, and I love her, but like she's just. It felt like they're like, who is the least right person to carry this whole movie? That is already a weird idea for a movie.
Yes,
and then Rollerball is just Rollerball.
I mean, it's not a good film.
It's not.
It doesn't really make it work.
Doesn't really roll.
I will miss this man.
I will too. I mean, I'm just like looking at my Letterboxd list visually. And it was the whole argument for why we wanted to do him, why we got excited when we started doing him. It's just being like, look at these 5 of the most watchable movies ever made.
Right.
At this top tier. The way Letterboxd visually splits it up, you know?
It's why we did him.
Yeah.
And why we always were going to do him.
And everything weird is weird in an interesting way. There's nothing uninteresting about this man's career.
But Thomas Crown, I think, is really, really, really underrated. And it's also just not a great home video version of it. But when I was watching it, I'm like, I did the import. One of the best R-rated programmers for adults made of like any era for me. Like it feels like a movie that could be on TCM. It's
88
so
films,
good.
UK release with a good slipcover and some retrospective features.
Well, I bought the wrong Blu-ray and whatever. I guess I'm not a physical media guy.
It's still not great, but it's better than the American version.
Interesting.
I'm really embarrassed I didn't know this happened. I would have bought it.
Overdue for a 4K.
Maybe it'll happen.
Now basically anytime I buy an import
steelbook that looks like the briefcase?
A steel case? I mean,
that's fun.
But I would say I have to mention it just that you are in the episode of my show that was very loosely inspired by Last Action Hero. So there is that connective tissue.
That is true. And the main role of the sort of motley of miscellaneous roles I played on the show was me riffing on John Travolta. Of course, doing my Danny Zuko. Demented Danny Zuko.
Yeah, I thought Straight Walls, we should go full Zuko on that. And I'm really excited that David Lynch won your March Madness
You're calling it here.
Yeah, the voting hasn't even started yet. We recorded.
Before the episode...
It looks like Soderbergh is taking Barry Levinson to the cleaners. That's all we really know so far.
Okay.
Yes. That's the only news we have.
Before the episode, you were saying you were going to do the opposite bit of confidently predicting the person you think is least likely to win. And now you're just...
I was going to be like, I'm so glad Curtis Hanson won. And I feel like I probably did it somewhere in this 10-hour podcast and forgot it. But I hope you do, Lynch, because there's a fake movie in one of our episodes that you can barely hear in the mix now, where I wrote like 10 pages of like a Preston Sturges or Frank Capra movie.
It was very fun to record.
Dean Hurley, who is Lynch's sound designer, created a whole fake audio track, and I don't even know how anyone can hear it. Anyone who's heard it loves it, but you can't hear it in the mix. And you had to do like 10 pages of dialogue.
I did a lot. It was fun to do. No, I don't know if there's some way to somehow who knows. But
but there's
it's a deep Easter egg.
But everything that's in the video store, there's a fake movie playing in all the background, and then that's the thing you're in, like Dean Hurley, who did Twin Peaks: The Return and all that stuff. So when Curtis Hanson and Lynch tie, and you do both of their series back to back,
that's the one promise we're making. We're gonna do them both.
Tell the listeners what show you're talking about. We should plug it.
Scott Pilgrim Takes Off.
I know, but
anyone who's going to watch it already saw it. Sorry, I meant, Griffin played multiple people.
I played multiple
on
people.
the show.
I didn't play multiple man, but I played multiple characters.
We got hired because of the ad reads on this show.
This is true. This is what BenDavid has told me.
I did tell him though. That's like
That was because of the
awesome.
Yeah.
You could play Jamie Madrox, right? What's Eric Dane played him? Is that the only time everyone's attempted?
He's the only live action.
Yeah.
I'm kind of an Eric Dane type, right?
The way those fucking movies burn.
Like the silence, the non-response.
Yes, you're a McSteamy
I'm joking.
reborn. What are you
Fucking
talking
go
about?
on. If you don't laugh at what I say, then it makes it sound like I'm insane.
I was in the middle of a fugue state over how the later X-Men movies waste a lot of my favorite X-Men with like one scene where they're like, I'm the multiple man, I get multiple. And someone's like, I just hit you in the head with a hammer. And he's like, I'm dead.
I watch the entire Fox X-Men universe every day and I have zero notes. It was executed perfectly.
You have zero notes about the behind the scenes.
Yeah, the morality of the people working on the films. Especially in senior positions. I go, good. Sounds good.
Oh, man.
I had something to say, and I just got so thrown.
Alan Cummings
Dane
should
playing
get yelled
Walker.
at a lot. That guy needs to get taken down a peg. Make him uncomfortable.
It's
Well-
so sad that he only ever played Nightcrawler once.
That sucks. And then he wanted to come back. And they're
Yeah.
like, I don't know, fuck you.
We only make bad decisions here.
I just want to say, in case I never get to come back, that this
Hey, you're
is
definitely
my.
coming back.
Either way, this is my favorite podcast, and I'm extremely appreciative that I got to be on it. And I listened to every normal episode and the Patreon episodes.
That's a good way to delineate normal and Patreon.
Yeah.
Because
No,
we
I'm
are
just
not
energy.
normal on paywall.
Yes.
No, I think we're good on paywall, unpaywalled, but it's not normal.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's like I definitely listened to way too much or all of it,
That's
and I
very
just do want to mention that when I listened to the Predator one and we got to the end, and Chris said, none of them were good at Arnold impressions.
No. I mean, one of us is really bad at it.
I like the focus of that statement being on the group being bad rather than what I've been reading for the last several weeks are, I know he's trying to own it and be funny, but truly, how is he so bad
It's
at that?
just funny that you do Adam Sandler in Hotel Transylvania, that you do an impression of something that is recognizable. That's why yours is particularly funny.
blah, blah, blah.
Like, that's really what you're doing.
It's not. In my ears, it sounds very different. It doesn't
I know.
sound like Arnold, but it does
I know.
sound different.
And then when I was listening back to the episode, I was like, yeah, it kind of does have a blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah.
if it bleeds, we can kill it. Blah, blah, blah.
I don't think I have a particularly good Arnold at all, but having a good Arnold, it's like Walken or whatever, where it's like, there's 80 guys who do a good one. You're never going to hit that tier.
No. People have been saying I've been putting too much energy into it.
Yeah, sure.
Get to the chopper. Like if I they're
Well,
like, just
say
do
something
McBain.
else. Yeah, do McBain, sure.
Right, that's the joke. I'm like, I don't think I'm doing that well, but it's less egregious than what I was doing at the beginning of this miniseries.
There's something. Yeah,
Have you ever
I
been
can't
able to
it.
do someone then lost it? Like I used to do a
Yes.
really good Wahlberg, and now I couldn't do it with a gun in my head.
Interesting. Yeah,
like I
there
could do it, and everyone would like
King.
laugh, and then now it's like I got in my head about it, and now I don't sound like him at all when I do it.
I honestly, I
How
get
you doing, Arthur?
anytime
You
I'm
king?
fucking teed up to do Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I have that fear of like, what if this is the
What if
time
this is
I
it? It's
realize I've
gone.
lost
The
it?
top will spin and then
I'm
fall.
Julie Andrews and I can't sing anymore. I'm like, it's the one that everyone agrees I have.
You have others, dude. You shouldn't just think of
Nolte,
JGL as your only
Nolte just
one.
takes a lot out of me.
I can't believe I did a Jonathan Liebsman drive-by for like
It
no
was
reason.
good. I think it was.
It's like now someday I'm going to host SNL, and he's going to be the musical guest, and it's going to be like really bad.
Hey,
He
look,
does play a mean kazoo. Yeah.
first of all, 10 comedy points. Second of all, we're doing Ninja Turtles on Patreon, so I'll be making my own drive-bys.
Oh, poor Liebsman. That's right. He's about to get like worked like a speed bag.
Yes.
That's right.
Hey, BenDavid, do you know who we're doing next? Have I told you? I forget.
Who are you doing after this?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
'Cause we're
right. We have
about to announce it to our listeners.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know, but I'm excited to find out and not be able to tell anybody for months.
Well, next week we're rolling straight into our next miniseries because we do have a couple new releases coming out this summer that are going to break things up. Some scheduling palate cleansers. We have Furiosa and Beetlejuice, and M. Night Shyamalan's Trap coming up over the summer. So no kind of Ben's choices or palate cleansers in between.
I mean, you never know.
Does M. Night Shyamalan's
As of right
daughter
now.
get covered?
No, but I'm
No.
excited for that movie.
Yeah.
It's got a good premise.
We're getting to an interesting territory of, do we owe this movie in any form? There's starting to be some things that feel adjacent to things we owe.
okay.
And I feel like we're erring on the side of no.
No, but the Patreon's there for a reason. We can always throw things up there, maybe. Who
Yeah, but like
knows?
when I walk out my door, people throw eggs at me and go like, "What is the plan for Frozen Empire?" I'm like, probably we never do an episode.
No,
on
there's no,
N94.
I think we have a hard and fast rule. We are not obligated to cover new entries in franchises.
That is
we've
true.
never done that
Unless it is a main feed franchise.
But yes, that's but like
Yeah.
we set that for us right away because we did Marvel, and it's not like we're gonna catch up on every
you're
Marvel.
Right. You know what?
right?
That's
You
good
know?
that it's
Right.
the Marvel rule.
Right. And at this point,
We don't
imagine if we were like, all right, guys, strap in.
Yeah.
15 more Marvel episodes.
And they're the
however
ones that
fucking
everyone
many there are,
likes.
right? Yes. And we watch all the shows.
Look, next week we're going straight into another, if not
Long
overdue,
mold.
long mold, long requested, long desired filmmaker.
Yes.
Satoshi Kon.
Yes, Satoshi Kon.
Another tragically short filmography.
True. Cut short by death.
Death.
His first film, Perfect Blue, will be our episode next week.
My favorite animated movie of all time.
I mean, this guy made several films that are in that conversation.
I think so.
There are at least 3 of his movies I hear people regularly argue could be considered the greatest animated
The
film
height
of all
of their
time.
medium.
And the
a
fourth
TV
one
show that people also consider the height of a
is
medium.
no slouch either.
And then the fourth one, that's the only one I've ever seen, but I hear it's no slouch.
Satoshi Kon, Perfect Blue, Millennium Actress, Tokyo Godfathers,
Paprika.
Paprika,
It's a month of Satoshi.
and we'll be doing Paranoia Agent on Patreon.
Are you going to do a Patreon of Opus, his manga?
No, but I've ordered it. I am going to read it.
It's really good. It's
Yeah.
on my coffee table.
And then after that, we're going to do a couple other guys before we get to Curtis Hanson or whoever it is.
Yeah, we're doing shorties because we have to.
We kind of keep
We
ahead.
were going to run out of runway
We're
waiting
shorties
for March
watching
Madness
shorties.
winners. We got to stay ahead. So we're slotting in a couple shorties, but it's been fun to knock out a lot of these people who have been. And before anyone thinks that's a sign that we're ending the show, if we
Enough.
covered every person who we have said we will definitely cover one day,
Yeah.
the show would run for 10 years to get us right to Tom Shadyac, and then we end on a perfect note.
When are you doing Gore Verbinski?
Exactly.
Oh, I missed my best bad joke.
Oh,
I'm so mad. Which is my theory that the guy who shot basketball. I already ruined my joke, but the guy who shot rollerball in Basic shot basketball before that. My theory is that McTiernan was so obsessed with how he
This is a
shot
really
that
good
new
joke.
sport
Yeah.
that he hired that guy to do rollerball.
yeah.
Which is also my theory, like, of Spielberg was so into Cool as Ice. That's why he hired Kaminsky. Like, I've just decided there's always some harebrained reason.
I think my joke response to you, because you texted that joke to me.
Oh, I think at some point I said, you can use this joke.
Yes.
I think I texted you that.
And
like,
then I said, you get to say that. And I think my response was basic skitball.
It is.
I think I
Yes,
texted
yes,
you
of course.
basic skitball.
It is so funny to think about Spielberg hiring Janusz Kaminski, not because he's Polish and
Yes.
like I'm making Schindler's List and maybe I should, but instead being like, Cool as Ice is giving Schindler's List.
if you watch a movie on mute, it does.
It does.
It's got all the gravitas.
Yeah.
Yes. And of course, after Satoshi Kon, we will be discussing the directorial career of Janusz Kaminski. It's going to be Lost Souls.
Oh man,
And
Always
that
forget
might
he
be it.
directed that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I forget that movie every day. That's actually
You forget
but
that movie every day. Every day it slips out of your
it
brain.
does. But that someday I do want to do a podcast on why DP should stay DPs and not
Sure.
direct,
It's,
even
it's,
if
it's
speed
a
is
rare
amazing.
jump. Right. Yeah.
You and I have had that conversation way
The
too many
two.
times. Yeah.
The two who made the jump successfully
Who?
and then lost it.
Who?
Sonnenfeld.
Sure.
Like it's
And
worth
DeBont.
it's worth it for those, but if you look at all the other guys, every single time they do it, it's like, dude, like
It's just fascinating
And
that it
also
doesn't
just-
happen.
And astounding that those two guys still couldn't maintain.
and they can never go back. It's like
No.
everyone would rather just direct commercials forever than go back to being like an A-list DP. And it's
Well,
like, come on, man.
There's one guy in particular we've talked a lot about.
No, but it's a lot of guys.
No, I know.
Lance Accord is like the biggest
Hey,
commercial director out there, and he was
bums me the
Spike Jonze,
fuck out.
amazing DP.
And the commercials he does, I would say, are not particularly interesting.
This is a weird way to end the McTiernan episode.
It is.
Is there anything else we need to say?
Did you know this? That Lance Accord directed
I
that
do.
like 10-minute ET sequel mini movie.
Look, I'm not gonna beef with anyone like who's earning a living or whatever, but yes, it's.
Can we just talk about the fact that
disappointing?
Predator should not be watchable, and yet it's a masterpiece?
It's a masterpiece.
Yes, I mean I agree with that. Predator is very good, and that is a McTiernan film, so probably a better thing to end on. But
Yeah,
is
let's
there
end
any
on
other?
the note of
Do you want to do your Schwarzenegger impersonation one more time? Maybe.
Can we do that? Remember the Schwarzenegger prank call thing? Can we like prank call someone? That's like feels like a producer Ben move.
Like
do you
the
remember
soundboard?
That? Yeah, the soundboard
Yeah.
where it's like my CPU is a neural net processor and all
Can we
that
make
stuff.
a Yarnold soundboard so people can prank phone call other people with
a
Yarnold
bad
quotes?
impression?
Yeah.
No, we need to
Well,
redo it
you're
where
asking
Griffin
it
does
as a
all of them.
question, and if I had to answer,
Yeah.
I would say no.
Okay. Well, then I'll say, thank you all for listening to this mini-series.
Now, are you just putting some spin on it? At
No,
this
I'm
point?
actually no, because if I want to do it better, I'll just thank you all for listening. This is so fuck. Here's what I want to say. Here's how I want to end the episode.
Yes.
BenDavid, thank you for being here.
Thank you, BenDavid.
I hope I didn't ruin it.
Absolutely not. We'll have you on sooner than Dragonfly, which is on the books. I'm looking here, January 1st, 2020. 35.
Yeah, 35. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, Barron Trump is president.
So you're gonna have me for Patch Adams.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now, excuse me, let me just prepare myself here.
Mhm.
Thank you all for listening, and please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to everybody for co-producing the show.
Sounds like he's trying to eat flubber.
Thank you to J.J. Bush for research.
Like his mouth is at war with itself.
Thank you, Lee Montgomery, Great American Novel, for our theme song.
End of Days is pretty good.
Alex Barron and AJ McKeon for our editing. AJ McKeon's also the production coordinator.
I'm going to watch that. I'm going to watch End of Days.
Joe Powerhouse for our artwork.
Thinking of doing like a Satan series.
You should do Peter
put,
Hyams.
He put your face on my body, David. David, he put your face on my body. It was your face on my body. Isn't that funny, David?
I'm gonna get to the chopper.
Tune in next week for Perfect Blue, blah, blah, blah.
We probably know the guess on that one, but we'll see.
And as always, I have been Yarnold. Hey.
Yarnold, hey.